Hello everyone watching the Paranormal M channel. Welcome back. This is the place where we share real paranormal experiences. And yes, this is honestly my favorite part of the day, getting to hang out with you and help you sleep a little better every night. Thanks so much for supporting the channel and for sending in all your stories. Don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications. Alright, let's get into today's paranormal experiences. Good night. Hey. So this is something I don't tell a lot of people, because it sounds like the kind of story that makes you pause and wonder if the person saying it is okay. And honestly, I've wondered that too. When I was little, my family swears I used to talk to someone who wasn't there. I'd sit in my room and chatter away like I had company, and I'd tell them I was talking to my granddad, Papa, who had already passed from cancer. I don't really remember doing that. Not clearly, but they do. They all do. What I do remember are the other moments, the ones that stuck like burrs. For context, I did see a psychiatrist later on. What I was experiencing got labeled as hallucinations, and I was put on medication. It helped, like it turned the volume down on whatever was happening in my head. I've been off the meds for about a year now, and it's mostly quiet these days. But the thing is, some of what I saw back then felt way too solid, way too real to shrug off as imagination. And maybe it didn't help that I grew up in Nova Scotia. If you've ever lived there, or even just visited, you know people tell ghost stories the way other places talk about the weather. The woods are old. The fog is thick. Even on a normal day, it can feel like the world is holding its breath. Anyway, there's a cemetery not far from where I grew up, close enough that an 11-year-old could bike there after school without it being a whole big adventure. I had this beat-up mountain bike I was obsessed with, and I'd ride out there with my backpack stuffed with sketchbooks and pencils. I didn't have many friends. Drawing was safe, quiet. So was the graveyard. It sounds strange, I know, an 11-year-old choosing a cemetery as their hangout spot, but it felt peaceful. Nobody bothered me. The air was still. Sometimes I'd sit near the older stones and talk to myself while I sketched, like the place could hold my secrets without laughing at them. Then one afternoon, I rode up like I always did, and I wasn't alone. I saw a woman near one particular plot, standing with her back to me. She was in a wedding dress, this long, white dress with a train that dragged across the ground. Except it had rained the day before, and the cemetery was muddy, and yet her dress was spotless, like it didn't belong to the world around it. She was pale, thin, not in a sickly way, more like she was made of moonlight. And she wasn't wandering randomly. She was fixed on that one spot, like she was searching for someone who never arrived. I remember my stomach dropping. Not because she looked scary at first. She looked almost beautiful, in this eerie, wrong place kind of way. But I was shy with strangers. A stranger in a graveyard, alone, in a wedding dress? My brain immediately went, leave right now. So I did what nervous kids do. I decided to slip away before she could turn around and talk to me, ask where my parents were, ask why I was there. I watched her shoulders start to shift, like she was about to face me, and I panicked. I jumped on my bike and pedaled toward the gate. And I know this sounds dramatic, but I swear on everything. I looked back after only a few seconds. She was already at the gate, just standing there, watching me ride away like she'd been waiting for that moment. And that's when I saw her face, or what was supposed to be her face. It wasn't right, like it was unfinished. Like someone started painting it and then stopped. I can't tell you the shape of her nose or her mouth because my brain refuses to fill in the blanks. But I remember the eyes. They were there, and they weren't. They felt hollow. Not angry exactly, just empty. Like looking into a house where no one lives anymore, not walking, jogging. After me. I didn't wait to see more, I just went. I pedaled so hard my legs burned, and I didn't stop until the graveyard was far behind me and my lungs felt like they were ripping. I didn't tell anyone that day. Not properly. I think I tried later, in that half-laughing way kids do when they're terrified and testing if it's safe to admit it. But it didn't matter. Adults always have an explanation ready. Oh, that was an angel. No, demons. You're gifted. You're a medium. And I remember thinking, okay, cool. Or maybe I need help. Because what kind of kid sees a faceless bride in a cemetery? I kept going back though. Not every day after that, but often enough. And the graveyard started to feel busy in small ways. Sounds like children laughing when no one was there. Footsteps behind me when I was alone. That place had a lot of tiny headstones. Kids who didn't get to grow up. And almost nobody visited them. No toys, no flowers, just weather and time. Around 12, my life got heavy in a way that's hard to describe without your throat tightening. Bullying at school, my grandmother getting sicker, my mom drinking more than she should. And then, I got pulled into a relationship with an older boy that wasn't really a relationship at all. It was control, fear, pressure. The kind of thing you don't even recognize as abuse at first because you're too young to have the words. And weirdly, that's when I started going to the graveyard more. Because it felt like the only place that didn't ask me to pretend I was fine. I'd bring little offerings, not like candles and ritual stuff, just pieces of me. A drawing tucked under a stone, a flower I'd picked on the way there. I'd clean up around the graves, brush dirt off nameplates, straighten little fallen decorations that someone left years ago. I never stepped directly on the plots. I treated the place like it had rules, like it deserved respect. I think I believed, deep down, that if I was gentle with the dead, something gentle might find its way back to me. And then one night, that boy tried to do something to me that I still struggled to say out loud. It was violent, and it was wrong, and it left me feeling like my body didn't belong to me anymore. Afterward, I didn't tell my parents. I didn't tell a teacher. I didn't tell a priest. I didn't tell anyone. Part of me thought it was my fault. Part of me thought, this is just what love is like, which makes me want to go back in time and wrap my arms around that kid version of me and shake the world until it made room for her to be safe. I grew up around Catholicism, so my brain went to that awful place where you think suffering means you're being punished. Like God was angry at you, and this was the price. So I started praying on my own, but not in a church, in the graveyard. There was a big tree near the spot where I'd first seen the bride, and I'd sit under it and whisper prayers I half remembered and half made up. Forgiveness prayers, protection prayers, begging prayers. The kind of prayers you say when you're crying so hard you can't breathe right. I assumed no one was listening. But then one day, he came with me. It was daytime, and for a while it was normal. We walked, talked. The air felt ordinary, until we got close to that area under the tree. His whole body changed. He went pale, like the color drained out of him. He stopped so suddenly I almost walked into him, and he just stood there staring past me, staring into the cemetery like he'd suddenly realized he was in a room where he wasn't welcome. "I want to leave," he said, and I laughed a little because I didn't understand. "Why?" He swallowed hard and said, "Something is watching me," but he looked at me with real fear, the kind you can't fake. "It's watching me," he whispered. "It's angry. It hates me. We need to go." And even then, I didn't fully let myself believe it. We kept walking, but he got worse the deeper we went, like the air itself was pressing on him. Then he looked down at his ankle and froze. What is that?" I looked too. There was this bright orange cord, like a wire almost, wrapped tight around his ankle. Tight enough that it looked painful. And I swear to you, it hadn't been there when we walked in. He hadn't crouched down. He hadn't even paused long enough to mess with his shoe. It was just there, like something had decided to mark him. He yanked my hand and dragged me out so fast we were practically running. After that, it got harder to tell myself everything was just in my head, because that moment didn't feel like a hallucination meant to scare me. It felt like something else had finally turned its eyes on him. And I'm not proud to admit this, but I felt relief. Not joy, not revenge. Just this shaky relief, like, I'm not alone. Someone sees. Someone knows. I eventually got away from him when I started high school, and later I found out it wasn't just me. Other girls came forward, more than I ever wanted to imagine, and something in me snapped into place. If I stayed quiet, he'd keep doing it. So I reported him. The legal process was brutal and messy, and not as satisfying as people think it is. But I was believed. Enough. He didn't get every charge people hoped he would. It wasn't perfect. But he was found guilty, and there were consequences. And what still messes with my head is this. Every time he tried to threaten me afterward, every time he tried to ruin me, it was like it didn't stick. Things fell through. His plans failed. People didn't turn on me the way he wanted. It felt like something kept stepping between me and the worst of it. I'm not saying that's supernatural. I'm just saying it felt like I wasn't fighting completely alone. On the day I found out his sentence, I went for a long walk. My body didn't know what to do with the mixture of rage and relief, so my feet just kept moving. And somehow I ended up back at the graveyard. I walked straight to that plot under the tree, the one I always prayed near, and I sat down like I used to. I was older then, 15, maybe 16. The place looked the same, but I didn't. I cleaned up a little, picked up debris, straightened what I could. Then I sat and prayed one last time, not begging, not desperate, just grateful. And I said, out loud, to the stone, to the air, to whatever might have been there all those years, thank you for believing me. Then I left. I'm 18 now, well, almost 19, and I don't really see things anymore, not the way I did. The medication changed that, and even though I'm off it now, it's like that chapter closed quietly. But I still go to the graveyard sometimes, not because I'm searching for ghosts, because it feels like a place that held me when nothing else did. And even if I don't see them, I still feel, in a way I can't fully explain, that I'm not the only one keeping watch. So let me tell you about something that happened to me in the Delaware Water Gap, on the New Jersey side, back in early March, a couple years ago. It was on that rough stretch of Old Mine Road between the pull-offs for Van Campen's Glen and the Upper Glen. If you know the gap, you know it has a way of getting under your skin. I've spent so much time out there over the years that it feels almost personal, like the place recognizes you. And I've seen plenty of wild stuff in those woods too. Coyotes calling off in the distance, bobcats slipping through the brush like ghosts, snapping turtles big enough to make you question your life choices, hawks and owls watching you like you owe them money. I've even crossed paths with black bears more times than I can count. So I'm not somebody who panics every time a shadow moves. But what happened that night? I'm telling you straight, this wasn't maybe it was an animal territory. This was something else. It was my first real hike after winter, and the day had been beautiful. Sun out, crisp air, that early spring feeling like the world is waking back up. I finished up late, and right around 5:30 or so, a light rain started falling. Not a downpour, just enough to darken everything fast. By the time I got back to my car near the old Calno schoolhouse, the woods felt like they'd flipped a switch. One second it's dusk, the next it's night. I pulled out, about to make that left onto Old Mine Road, and I caught the glow of headlights coming from my right. My first instinct was to punch it and get in front, because locals learn real quick. If you get stuck behind a tourist on Old Mine Road, you might as well pack a lunch. The posted speed is 15 miles per hour, but between the potholes and those crater-sized dips, half the people drive like they're navigating the moon. But I hesitated, just for a beat, because I thought, what if it's a park ranger? I didn't feel like looking guilty for no reason. The vehicle rolls past me, and it's not a ranger, and it's definitely not a nervous tourist. It's a newer red pickup, looked like a Silverado, with Pennsylvania plates. The driver was moving like they knew the road, weaving around the worst potholes smooth as anything. I fell in behind them, keeping a couple car lengths back, basically letting them lead through the damage. We passed the main lot for Van Kampen's Glen. The road rises a little, then levels out, and that's when the truck taps its brakes. Not a slam, just a firm little checkup like they saw something ahead. Then the brake lights flare fully, and the truck stops dead. I stop behind them, confused, looking for the obvious explanation. Deer? Downed limb? Maybe a big branch dragged into the road. And then I see movement on the right side, close to the shoulder, something swaying in the dim light in a way that just felt wrong. Not like an animal shifting weight, not like a bush in the wind either. It was this jittery, uneven motion, like it couldn't decide what shape it wanted to be. I watched the silhouette of the pickup driver lean toward their window, trying to get a better look. And that's when I realize what I'm looking at least what it seems like at first. It looks like a fox, but it's standing upright, on its hind legs, too tall, too straight. The proportions are off in that way your brain tries to correct, like it's insisting it has to be normal because the alternative is ridiculous. My first thought was, oh man, that thing's sick. Rabid, maybe. Something neurological. Because I didn't want to think anything else. Then there's this quick pause, 2 seconds, maybe 3. I swear my brain couldn't translate it fast enough. It was like watching a scene without subtitles. The red pickup doesn't hesitate another heartbeat. It slams into gear and takes off like it's fleeing a fire. Tires biting, engine roaring, the whole truck fishtailing for a second as it crests that rise, like the driver almost lost it. And then the taillights are gone around the bend. And I'm just sitting there behind them, staring forward with my hands locked on the steering wheel like it's the only solid thing left in the world. So I do the one thing you do when your brain is screaming for clarity. I hit my high beams. And the light catches it fully. This thing is about 3.5 feet tall, maybe closer to 4. It's leaning forward like it's hunched with age, and it's doing this horrible bouncing sway, like it's balancing on the balls of its feet, rocking and twitching in short, unnatural bursts. The closest comparison I can make is that unsettled, erratic movement you sometimes see in people who aren't fully present, like their body is moving ahead of their mind. And then I see the face situation, and my stomach drops. Because the fox head, what I thought was a fox head, doesn't look right. The eye areas are wrong, like empty, like the sockets are there, but there's nothing in them the way there should be. And the hands, God, the hands, not paws. Small human hands, wrapped up in something, cloth strips or leather binding, like crude little gloves. And then it snaps its head up, and for a split second it's like the fox skin is just a covering, like a costume pulled too tight over something that was never meant to wear it. Underneath is this ancient-looking little face, humanish but not in a comforting way, weathered, sharp, old, and it spreads this grin across its mouth that's so mean and delighted, like it's proud of scaring you, like it's feeding on the reaction. and in its hands it's holding something like a staff or a rattlestick, about half its height. When it jerks it up toward my window, the end of it has 3 bright orange ornaments, shapes like little gourd bulbs or maracas, or even those old oversized Christmas lights. They were arranged in a way that made the top look almost forked, like a rough trident shape. It doesn't strike my car the way it struck the truck. It just shakes that rattle hard, right near my window, as if it's warning me off. And I could have sworn it was muttering while it did it. Not clear words, but that nasty little rhythm of someone talking under their breath and laughing at the same time. Listen, I've been scared before in the woods. I've had moments where adrenaline hits and you go cold. But this was different. This felt like my reality had been nudged sideways. And then the only instinct I had left kicked in. Leave. Now. I didn't slam the gas like the truck did, but I got moving fast enough that the potholes didn't matter anymore. And as soon as I was rolling, I started talking out loud to myself. Yep, you saw that. Yep, that just happened. Yep, that was real. Over and over, because part of my mind was already trying to erase it, trying to smooth it out into something acceptable, trying to tell me it was a trick of rain and darkness and exhaustion. But I knew it wasn't. And here's the weirdest part. Once I got some distance, I realized I wasn't even feeling pure fear. I felt charged, grateful even, like I'd been allowed to glimpse something I wasn't supposed to see, like the gap had lifted a corner of its curtain for half a minute and then dropped it again. And the face, this is going to sound oddly specific, but it reminded me of the strong-featured, hard-working indigenous guys I've known through jobs over the years. That kind of deep-set intensity in the eyes. Only in this case, it was twisted into something mischievous and mean. Like a little trickster that had been around way longer than any of us and was sick of people driving through its backyard. I'm not going to sit here and tell you I know exactly what it was. I don't. But if you ask me what it felt like an old spirit, a watcher, a bully, something that wanted outsiders to know very clearly that the road and the woods weren't theirs just because there's a sign and a parking lot. Call it folklore, call it paranoia, call it whatever makes you comfortable. But the normal explanation is honestly worse to me, because the only non-weird alternative is that there's some little person out there at night dressed in foxhide with a rattlestaff, waiting to terrorize drivers for fun. And I don't buy that. Not out there. Not in that stretch. Not with the way it moved. I don't think it wanted to kill us. I truly don't. It felt more like a warning, a scare tactic, like, keep moving, don't stop, don't linger. But I'll tell you this, I still think about that staff sometimes. The way it looked, the 3 orange ornaments, the way it shook it like it was part weapon, part instrument, part message. And every time I drive Old Mine Road in fading light, I catch myself glancing at the shoulders, half expecting to see something swaying in the dark, bouncing, waiting, grinning like it knows a secret I don't. So, for a long stretch of my life, almost 10 years, I worked inside Philadelphia's City Hall. If you've never been in that building, let me paint it for you the way it always felt to me. It's built like a giant square donut. Each side is about a full city block long, and there are these enclosed bridges that connect the sections, so you're walking along these corridors that look inward over a quiet courtyard and outward over the streets below. Every corner has an elevator bank at the end of these ridiculously long hallways, and right beside each set of elevators, there's a heavy door that opens into these marble stairwells, cold, echoey, the kind of place where your footsteps sound like they belong to someone else. And the doors, that's the thing. Solid wood doors everywhere. Courtrooms, offices, so many of them, lined up like a row of sealed boxes. The place can be busy, technically. People working, phones ringing, meetings happening. But when you're out in the hall, you can't see or hear any of it. So you'll be walking through this architectural masterpiece and still feel weirdly alone, like the building is holding its breath. Anyway, one afternoon, I had to walk from room 298 over to room 231. Same floor, but you know how it is in there. Down the hall, around a corner, then another corner, and suddenly you've walked what feels like half a mile. I did what I always did on that kind of trip. Head down, papers in hand, brain halfway somewhere else. I finished what I needed in 231 and started back toward 298, flipping through the paperwork as I walked, trying to make sure I hadn't missed anything. And then, about halfway down the hall, I looked up toward the elevator bank. And I saw Gina. Not my close friend or anything. We didn't really talk. She worked in a different office on the same floor, so we knew each other in that familiar co-worker way. A nod here, a quick morning there. But what made me pause was how dressed up she was. You know when someone looks too put together for a regular workday? Like hair perfect, outfit sharp, the whole vibe like she was headed somewhere important. I remember thinking, wow, okay, big day for Gina. So I smiled and called out, "Hey," and she smiled back. Not rushed, not distracted, just calm, warm even. She lifted her hand and gave me this little wave while she waited at the elevator, like it was the most normal thing in the world. And I kept walking. I rounded the corner toward my office, and honestly, that was it. No bells going off in my head, no lingering fear. Just a quick moment in the hall, filed away like any other. Until the next morning. I came in and a few people were gathered near the copier, talking in that low, serious way that makes you slow down before you even know why. I asked what was going on, and one of my coworkers turned to me and said, "Did you hear about Gina?" And I was genuinely confused, because in my head, she was still right there, by the elevator, smiling at me. So I said, "No, what happened?" And my coworker swallowed hard and said, "Her son called the front office. She passed away in her sleep. They just told us." My stomach dropped. I said, without even thinking, "What? No, I just saw her yesterday. She looked fine. She was here, by the elevators." And the second the words left my mouth, the whole little group went quiet. They all just looked at me. Then the person who'd told me the news shook their head slowly and said, "No, you didn't. She died the day before yesterday. Her son only called this morning, but she's been gone." I didn't argue. I didn't push it. I just nodded like, "Oh, okay," and I went back to my desk. But here's the thing. I know what I saw. I know the hallway. I know the elevator bank. I know the way she smiled, like she was headed somewhere, like she was fine, like she was still part of the world. And ever since then, every time I picture those endless corridors in City Hall, I think about how a place can be full of people and still feel empty, and how sometimes you can walk through a building that's holding 1,000 lives behind wooden doors, and still run into someone who, by every normal rule, shouldn't have been there at all. Hey, thanks for listening. I've been trying to find the right words for this because I don't want it to sound like a horror story. It's just my life. And lately, it's It's felt like I'm living inside something I can't explain. All through my childhood, I had these moments. Little things that didn't fit. I once told my grandma there'd been a fire in a house long before anyone ever mentioned it. Then later, we found out there had been one on that same property. I used to talk about kids outside and play like they were right there with me, even though the grown-ups insisted there was nobody. Back then, it felt normal, like I was just tuned in to something other people weren't. As an adult, it hasn't been like seeing full figures in the hallway or anything. It's more subtle now. I walk into a room and I can feel it, like the air has a mood. I read people without trying. Sometimes I'll catch myself quietly mapping out how a situation is going to unfold before it even happens, like my body knows the script. Then, a few months ago, my brother-in-law died by suicide. The day we went to his place to pick up some of his things, I stepped inside and it was like my chest locked up. I couldn't get a full breath. I remember standing there thinking, why am I panicking? I wandered down the hall without really choosing to, opened the bathroom door, and this is the part that still makes my skin prickle. Everything in me just released. It felt like someone turned a dial from panic to peace. Warm, soft, almost glowing in my bones. The kind of calm you feel right before anesthesia pulls you under, when your body finally stops fighting. Later, I learned that was the room where he died. I don't hear him like a voice in the room. It's more like thoughts that don't feel like mine, but they carry his tone. And I'll get these quick flashes in my mind, snapshots that I can't place, until I mention them to family and someone goes quiet and says, "That's real. That happened when he was little." One image kept coming back. A dark leather couch with this bright, burnt orange pillow. I tried to shrug it off. Brains do weird stuff when we're grieving, right? But when we went to the viewing to say goodbye, there it was. That exact couch. That exact pop of orange. I remember just standing there, cold all over, because I hadn't been looking for it. I didn't even know it existed. And there's this other thing. His cologne. I'll catch a whiff of it when my partner, his sister, gets overwhelmed or starts to crumble. It's strongest at my grandparents' place, especially when everyone's worried about their health. Just a sudden thread of that scent in the air, like a hand on my shoulder that isn't mine. I could almost live with all of that. Grief does strange things, and love doesn't always leave quietly. But then, there's this house. We moved here around a year and a half ago, closer to 16 months, I think, and I can't find much about its history. No clear trail. But the feeling inside it is heavy. Like the moment I walk in, something in my gut drops, like my organs fall an inch. It's not spooky. It's oppressive, dense, like the house is holding its breath and expecting me to do the same. And the weirdest part is, I can't leave. Leaving should be easy. It's just a door. But it feels like pushing through wet cement. On the rare times I do get out, I'm scattered and unreal for a few minutes, like my brain is full of static. And then, suddenly I'm myself again. And I'll think, there you are. Like the real me briefly returned. I keep saying out loud, I think someone died here. I haven't seen a man in the corner. I haven't watched anything crawl across the floor. It's not that. It's just this certainty that sits in my body like a stone. I get these visions in my mind of a bedroom, my bedroom, laid out a certain way, with a certain kind of light, a certain kind of furniture arrangement. One night I went digging online, searching old listings and archived photos, and when I found them, my stomach flipped. The room in the photos matched what I'd been seeing in my head, not perfectly down to every object, but enough that I felt like I'd been dreaming someone else's memory. And now I'm pulled to that room constantly. I'll stay in there for days. It's like my body believes it's the only place that makes sense, even when it doesn't feel safe, even when it feels like the walls are too close. My mental health has collapsed in ways I can barely describe without feeling ashamed. I don't work anymore. My sleep is down to a couple hours if I'm lucky. Eating feels like an impossible chore. I've been on so many medications I can't even keep track without checking the bottles. And I've had moments, more than once, where I've tried to end my life. I need you to know something, though. I don't want to die. That's what makes it so terrifying. These urges can hit like a wave that isn't mine, like a command that doesn't match my heart. I used to be steady. I had routines. I ran a business. I was studying psychology. I had structure and drive. Now I can barely recognize the way my days look, like my life got swapped out and I missed the moment it happened. There are other small things. Noises that make you pause. A door that clicks when nobody's near it. A water bottle tipping off the counter when it wasn't close to the edge. The kind of stuff you can rationalize until you're already unraveling, and then it lands heavier. During the worst of it, I adopted a cat. She's this little dark, glossy thing with sharp eyes, not the cute, playful type. At the shelter, she barely moved, and the staff warned me she could be aggressive, that she wouldn't be affectionate. But the pull I felt toward her was so strong, it was like my body chose her before my brain could argue. The moment I brought her into my room, she started purring. Now she won't leave my side. Bathroom, shower, bed, she's there. She sleeps on me like she's anchoring me to the world. She's picky with food, but she'll actually eat if I'm nearby, like she needs me present to feel safe. And she stares, always stares, at the same spot in the room, like she's watching something that never blinks back. Lately, I've been having panic episodes where I'm convinced I'm not safe. I barricade myself in my room. I look at the people I love, and my brain tries to tell me they aren't really them, like I'm watching a bad copy of my own life. I've done things I don't understand afterward, like trying to get out through a window, like my body is in pure escape mode. And there was one night that still scares me to say out loud. I lost time while driving. I came back to myself outside the car, in a scrubby area off the road, and my phone showed I'd called my mom and my sister to say goodbye. I don't remember making that call. I don't remember pulling over. I don't remember getting out. The ambulance came. I ended up on a short psychiatric hold, sedated, then sent home with more instructions and more pills. And now I'm here, on the couch, writing this while my stomach churns. The nausea eases if I go to my room, which makes no sense because the room is also the place that feels like it has a gravity all its own. My body is exhausted, but my nervous system won't stand down. I'm always scanning, bracing, waiting. I don't know how to communicate with anything, if there even is anything. I don't want to invite something in, and I don't want to feed a delusion if that's what this is. I just know I'm losing myself, and I miss the person I used to be. So I'm telling you because I need someone outside my own head to hear it plainly. I am scared. I am not okay, and I don't want to die. I want this to stop, and if I'm honest, part of me is saying this out loud because I need a lifeline. Not a theory, not an explanation. A lifeline. If you're hearing me right now, and you're the kind of person who can stay with someone through the hard parts, please, don't let me do this alone. And if you're in Thailand like I am, if you ever get to that point where you feel like you might hurt yourself, please call the Department of Mental Health hotline at 1323. If you need someone to talk to, you can also call Samaritans Thailand at 02-113-6789, and in an emergency, You can call 1669 for an ambulance. So, I moved into this house back in 2019, and I swear, I didn't even have the word weird in my head about it at first. It just felt like a normal place to live. But somewhere around 2020, little things started to feel off. Not dramatic movie off, more like, wait, was that just me? Off. The first thing I really remember was my dog. His name was Buddy. He was about 7 at the time, and he got into this strange routine that happened almost every night. He'd be lying there, totally calm, and then all of a sudden he'd sit up and start sniffing the air like he caught a scent that wasn't supposed to be there. Not playful sniffing, focused, intent. And then he'd freeze, completely still, like he was waiting for some invisible command. It reminded me of those search dogs when they hit on something important. He'd stay frozen for maybe 30 seconds to a minute. Then he'd casually walk right back to his bed and lie down like nothing happened. No barking, no growling, no panic. Just this odd little ritual. That went on for a couple months, and then it just stopped. And honestly, life got busy and I forgot all about it. Over the years after that, I'd have small stuff go missing, nothing huge. Like a coaster that should be on the bar suddenly showing up on a shelf upstairs, or a remote disappearing for days and then turning up in a spot I swear I already checked. But it wasn't constant, so I never really tied it together. I just assumed I was tired, distracted, messy, whatever. Then toward the end of 2025, things got a lot harder to shrug off. My dad had come over to install these recessed can lights in my downstairs bar area. Everything looked great. That same night, I had a few friends over, just a chill hangout. A couple beers, some darts, playing pool, the usual. At one point, we were mid-game, and I'm standing there lining up a shot when, no joke, the pool triangle rack and the 9-ball rack suddenly launched off the wall. Not slid down, not gently fell. They flew out and dropped like someone had smacked the wall from the outside. All of us just froze. Like that quiet, collective, did that just happen? Silence. I walked over, picked them up, and put them right back onto the hooks. And then we did that thing people do when they don't want to admit they're unsettled. We started trying to explain it away like detectives. We checked the hooks first. They weren't loose at all. In fact, they were those adhesive command hooks that are basically married to your wall. I even pulled one off to test it, and it ripped up paint, so there was no chance it had shifted or slowly peeled off or anything like that. We tried blaming vibrations, like maybe my dad drilling and working earlier loosened them, but that didn't fit either, because I'd literally just used the racks and put them back. And I always pushed them flat against the wall, seated safely, not hanging on the edge like they could slip. And still, the way they came off wasn't like gravity won. It was like force pushed them off. Then, this is the part that really got under my skin. Less than a week later, my mom stayed over with me and my boyfriend for the night. The next evening, she casually asks me, "Were you hanging stuff in your room around 2 in the morning?" I laughed and was like, "What? No." And she goes, "I heard banging, like you were hammering nails into the wall." The thing is, I was asleep. It was a work night, and my boyfriend was asleep too. He's the kind of sleeper who would absolutely notice if I got up, because he basically sleeps pressed against me. He swore I didn't move. So now I'm sitting there with 2 separate incidents, weeks apart, that don't really connect, but also don't feel easy to dismiss. So yeah, that's where I'm at. Not claiming it's anything supernatural, but also not totally convinced it's nothing. And I guess I'm telling you because I genuinely want to know. If this were happening to you, what would you think it was? So, need to tell you about this thing that happened to me the other night, because it still gives me this weird, tight feeling in my chest when I think about it. I was dreaming, nothing unusual at first, but something in it started to feel off, like the whole scene was glitching. And then I had that sudden thought, wait, I'm dreaming right now. The second I realized it, it was like the entire dream heard me. Everyone around me changed. Their faces weren't even angry at first, just locked onto me, like I'd broken some rule. And then they rushed me. Not in a movie fight way either, more like this overwhelming swarm, like the dream itself decided I didn't belong there anymore. My first instinct was to wake myself up. I tried to yank myself out of it the way you do when you're having a nightmare. But instead of waking up, I froze. I mean, completely froze. My eyes were open, or at least I felt like they were, but my body wouldn't move at all. I couldn't lift a hand, couldn't turn my head, couldn't even sit up. I wasn't fully asleep, but I wasn't fully awake either. I was just trapped in that in-between place. And the creepiest part? There wasn't even a shadowy figure or anything like that. No sleep paralysis demon. Just me, stuck there, panicking in silence. And this isn't even the first time something like this has happened. That's what scares me. It's like my brain knows the route. Because right when I thought, okay, maybe I'm waking up now, my mind pulled another trick. It felt like I slipped back under without noticing, like I fell asleep again mid-rescue, and suddenly I was right back in the same dream loop. Same atmosphere, same tension. Like I'd been dragged back to the exact place I was trying to escape. So I tried waking up again. I fought harder. I pushed and pushed until, finally, I woke up. Or, I thought I did. I was in the bedroom where I'd fallen asleep. Everything looked normal. The walls, the lighting, the familiar shape of the room. I was so relieved that I started yelling, like full-on shouting out loud. And the woman beside me, her name was Lena, shot upright, startled awake. She was asking what was wrong, and I was talking to her, trying to explain, trying to calm down. It felt so real, so solid. I remember her voice. I remember the way the room sounded when she moved. And then, out of nowhere, I slipped again. That same heavy drop, that same helpless feeling, like I was being pulled backward through a trap door. And suddenly, I was back in that first situation, stuck, unable to move, caught in that awful half-awake paralysis again. At that point, I was just exhausted, not even just scared, tired, like I'd been fighting my own brain for hours. And then, I actually woke up for real. This time there was no doubt. My body moved. The air felt different. The room felt stable. I grabbed my phone and checked the time. 3:34 a.m. And I just laid there thinking, why does it happen like that? Why does the dream turn on me the moment I realize I'm dreaming? Like awareness is the trigger. Why do I wake up paralyzed like I'm stuck inside my body? And how does my mind manage to fake me out so convincingly, like a dream inside a dream, until I don't even trust waking up anymore? So, let me take you back a couple years. There were 5 of us at the house that night, just friends hanging out, because Ria's parents were swamped with work and almost never stayed home back then. It felt like we had the place to ourselves, like a little private world. And honestly, we were laughing so much we completely forgot the one tiny detail we all knew in the back of our heads. That house had a reputation. At first, everything was normal. We were chilling, talking, messing around, just a simple night in. But then the evening started acting wrong. Around 7 p.m., it got dark, like really dark. And that didn't make sense because it was summer, and in our area, it usually wouldn't get properly dark until closer to 9. We noticed it, we even joked about it, but nobody wanted to be the person who said, This is creepy. Then around 8, the power cut out. Not a flicker, fully gone. The entire house just dropped into darkness like someone shut it off on purpose. We waited for the inverter to kick in, and it didn't. Turned out that had died too, so we were stuck with this thick, heavy dark. No lights, no fans, nothing. We lit a few candles, and 2 of my friends started feeling around the place trying to find a torch. And while they were doing that, the temperature shifted. I swear, it was like someone opened a door to winter. It got cold. Not a little chilly cold, weird cold. The kind of cold that makes your skin tighten. And again, we all noticed. And again, we all tried to brush it off like, okay, yeah, sure, totally normal. Because what else do you do? After a while, we got bored sitting around candles, so someone suggested we play a game. Basically a dark version of hide and seek where one person has to find the others. Normally we'd blindfold the seeker, but the whole house was already pitch black, so we didn't bother. The first few rounds were actually fun. Like genuinely fun. We were whispering and trying not to laugh, bumping into furniture, daring each other to hide in weirder places. Then we hit the round that ruined everything. 2 of my friends decided to hide near the doorway by the shoe rack. It wasn't even tall, more like one of those short racks you can sit on if you really want to. One friend perched on top, and the other crouched beside it. Me and another friend went to the bedroom. Now this friend, Armand, was a serious basketball player, like proper competitive, and he had this brutal bruise on his leg from a recent fall. I mean, it was nasty. Dark, swollen, the kind of bruise you look at and immediately wince. He was already moving a little carefully because it hurt that bad. So we're in the bedroom, tucked away, trying to stay quiet. And after a while, maybe 15, 20 minutes, it felt like someone came close to us. Not like, I hear footsteps. Like, presence. That sensation where the air shifts and your brain goes, someone's right there. We assumed it was the seeker. So we froze, covering our mouths, shaking with silent laughter, waiting for that aha moment. And then, the screaming started. First, the 2 friends by the shoe rack screamed like something had happened to them. Then the seeker screamed. Then Armand, right beside me, let out this horrible shout that didn't even sound like him. And that's when panic just took over. We didn't even talk, we just ran. All of us bolted out of the house like the building itself had suddenly decided it didn't want us inside anymore. Outside, the streetlights were on, and the world looked normal again. Bright enough to see everyone's faces. Bright enough to realize we were all shaking. I remember going, "What happened? What happened?" Because my brain couldn't catch up. And one by one, everyone told me what they saw. The friend hiding beside the rack said he saw 2 pairs of red eyes in the dark. Not a reflection. Not maybe it was something. He was dead serious. Eyes, low to the ground, staring. The seeker said she saw an actual figure move right in front of her, like a whole silhouette sprinting past, and then it ran toward the upstairs area, like it was heading for the terrace. And Armand. Armand was limping, face pale, voice cracking, and he pulled up his pant leg and said someone had pressed into his bruise, like fingers digging in, so hard it started bleeding again. You know when you hear a bunch of scary things and your mind tries to argue with them? Like, okay, maybe one thing could be explained. But all of it at once? All of us experiencing something different at the exact same moment? Yeah, no. That was it. The night was over. No debate. No, maybe it's fine. We called it immediately. And later, Rhea told us something that made my stomach drop even more. She said the dogs around her house go absolutely wild at exactly 3:33 a.m., like on schedule, like they're reacting to something they can sense and we can't. I've been through a lot of things in my life, but I'm not exaggerating when I say this. That was the single scariest experience I've ever had. And even now, thinking about that sudden cold, that dead darkness, those screams starting one after another like dominoes, it still makes me feel like something in that house didn't just scare us. It noticed us. Hey, so I've been holding on to this for a while, and I'm sharing it the same way it lives in my head, like I'm talking to a friend who won't laugh at me. When I was 15, my mom moved us from Ohio down to West Virginia, Huntington. It wasn't the middle of nowhere or anything, but it had those edges where the city just sort of gives up and the woods start. You know what I mean? Streetlights, sidewalks, and then suddenly a trailhead and trees that look like they've been there forever. It was late summer, still warm out, and my little brother, Bub, and I decided we wanted to be out of the house. We weren't looking for trouble, just that restless teenage, I can't breathe in these four walls feeling. We grabbed a couple tall cans, and I had a few joints tucked away. Bub wasn't much of a drinker, so most of it was mine. We figured we'd walk toward the park and maybe cut through the trail if it felt safe. The park wasn't far, but there was this stretch you had to walk where things got quiet, like the city noise fell behind you. There was an open lot on the left, a square of grass where you could tell a house was supposed to be built someday. No fence, no construction, just this empty patch next to the road, like a missing tooth. We were maybe, I don't know, a couple 100 feet from it? Close enough to see clearly, far enough that if something moved, you'd have a second to react. And that's when we saw it. At first, my brain didn't even have a label for it, just something pale. Really pale, bald, long-limbed in a way that didn't look right. It was low to the ground on all fours, facing away from us like it hadn't noticed we were there. The way it held itself wasn't like a dog or a deer. It looked wrong, like it was doing something it wasn't built to do. Bub stopped so hard he almost bumped into me. I felt his hand grab my arm, tight. And in this small voice, like he didn't want it to hear, he goes, "Sissy, what is that?" He still calls me that, and I still call him Bub. We've always been like that. No real names, just family names. I remember this very clearly. I didn't answer. Not because I didn't want to, but because my throat just wouldn't. And also because I could feel him starting to panic, and I knew if I acted panicked too, we'd both spiral. So I did the thing I'd always done as the older sister. I acted like I didn't care. I just kind of shrugged, like, whatever, even though inside my heart was beating so hard it felt like it had hands. I stared at it, and I stayed still, because something in me said, "Don't run. Don't make it a chase." Then it moved. It didn't turn around fully. It did this sharp, jerky head motion, like when someone snaps their head back over their shoulder because they felt eyes on them. And it looked right at me. I swear to you, I felt it hit me like a weight, like the air got heavier. Its face, it didn't have much of a nose, not like a normal person's. And its mouth was there, but the lips didn't look like living lips. I don't know how else to say it. The eyes were the worst part. Dark and small, not like big animal eyes, more like human eyes that were empty. Like nobody was home. Like whatever was looking out of them wasn't fully there. And while it kept its body facing away, it held eye contact with me and it screamed. Not a movie scream, not a person yelling. It was this harsh, strange sound that felt like it didn't belong outside, like it came from too deep or from the wrong shape of throat. And I didn't move. I know that sounds dramatic, but I had one thought. Nothing happens to him. Not while I'm standing here. I remember thinking, I can't die. I'm not dying in a field, and he's not getting hurt because I panicked. So I stayed locked in place, staring back, even though every part of me wanted to grab Bub and bolt. And then, it ran. But it didn't run like a normal person either. It just took off on all fours, fast, too fast, and vanished toward the darker edge of the lot where the grass met the trees. And just like that, the field was empty again, like it had never been there. We didn't go into the park after that, not even close. I didn't say, "Let's check it out." And I didn't even say, "Did you see that?" I just gently pulled Bub along and kept walking, but I changed our route. I stayed in the most lit-up areas I could find, near houses and porch lights and open streets. I kept my voice calm, like we were just taking a different way home because I felt like it. The whole walk back, we barely spoke. Bub was quiet in this way that made me feel sick, like he was trying not to cry. I kept glancing behind us, but I never saw it again. We didn't talk about it until we were inside, door locked, bedroom door shut, sitting on my bed like we were trying to convince ourselves the walls meant something. For a while, we told ourselves it was probably a person. Maybe someone messed up on drugs. Maybe someone with some kind of condition. We repeated that explanation for weeks like it was a prayer. But neither of us actually believed it. Not deep down. Because I've seen people act weird. I've seen people on substances. I've seen animals do scary things. And this wasn't any of that. This was bald and pale and thin in a way that felt unnatural. And that scream. God, that scream. I've never heard anything like it before or since. The part that sticks with me the most, honestly, is what Bub told me later. He said the way I acted like I didn't care helped him, that it kept him from losing it completely. And that breaks my heart a little, because I was terrified too. I was just pretending harder. It's been a few years now, and I still think about what might have happened if we ran. If it would have chased us, or if it would have turned into something worse just because we fed into that energy. I've told people in real life, and most of them do that thing where they say, "That's scary," and then immediately try to top it with their own ghost story. Some say they believe me, but you can tell they're not sure what to do with it. And I get it. I don't even know what to do with it. I've tried searching. I've tried finding anything. Reports, sightings, keywords, weird local stories. Anything that gives it a name other than that pale thing. But I can't find the right words because I still don't know what it was. I just know what I saw. And I know my brother saw it too. So, this happened a while back, but I can still feel it in my stomach when I think about it. I woke up in the middle of the night. That kind of sudden wake up where everything is too quiet and your brain is instantly alert. And my first thought was my cat, Milo. He's an outdoor cat, comes and goes, and sometimes he'll sit by the house, waiting to be let in like he owns the place. There's this small window in the corridor, and I usually call him from there. So I padded out, half asleep, and whispered his name into the night. And almost immediately, I heard something running over the snow toward the front of the house. The sound was so clear, that quick scritch, scritch, scritch of paws or boots. I couldn't tell which, but it was moving fast. It got close, like right behind the corner of the house, and then it just stopped. Dead stop. I stood there, holding my breath, waiting for the little meow or the familiar shuffle. Instead, after a few seconds, I heard footsteps again, but this time they were retreating. Slow, only a few steps, then another stop. That's when I started feeling wrong about it. Like, not scared yet, but something in me going, pay attention. I waited a bit longer, then stepped outside to see if Milo was there. Nothing. No cat shape, no movement, no little eyes reflecting light. Just the yard and the snow and the trees in front of the house. I live in a village, so it's not like the streetlights are bright or anything. It's darker than people think it is. I called again. This time I heard walking from a different direction. Not running, calm, steady footsteps, like whoever or whatever it was had all the time in the world. But I still couldn't see anything. The trees were just trees, shadows, nothing solid. I remember thinking, maybe I should go closer, just to check. But the instant that idea formed, I got this strong, almost physical feeling of no. Like my body rejected it before my mind could argue. So I stayed put. Then I heard it again. 1 or 2 steps, then another. Like it was testing the space between us. Like a weird little game of step, stop, step, stop. I climbed onto the stairs to get a bit higher, thinking maybe I'd finally spot Milo or some fox or something. Still nothing. Just the yard, the snow, and that uneasy silence. There were these wooden pallets stacked near the house, and my brain tried to make it make sense. Okay, it's an animal hiding behind the pallets. That's it. So I took a step, and again, that same internal warning. Don't go over there. And I actually listened to it, which is not always something I'm good at. I stood there, frozen, staring into the dark like if I stared hard enough, the night would confess what it was hiding. Eventually, it went quiet. Quiet enough that I started doubting myself. Maybe it really was Milo. Maybe I just scared him off. Maybe it was nothing. So I went back to my room. A few minutes passed. I don't even know how many. And then I heard footsteps again, faint, from outside. That same slow movement on the snow. I got up and went back to the corridor window. I opened it again, just a crack at first, and listened. I called softly, "Milo?" Nothing answered, but I could feel it out there. I leaned in closer and stared into the darkness. And after a few seconds, something peeked out from behind those pallets. Not a cat, not an animal, just eyes. I didn't see a face. I didn't see a body clearly. Just those eyes, watching from the edge of cover like it had been waiting for me to look again. And I swear to you, my whole body locked up. I didn't scream. I didn't move. I just stared like my brain forgot how to do anything else. And the worst part is, it didn't move either. Not even a flinch, not even a blink that I could see. Eventually, survival kicked in. I shut the window so hard my hands hurt, and I ran back to my room like I was being chased. I slammed the door and stood there, heart pounding so loud it felt like it was filling my ears. And then came the part that messes with me the most, because I honestly don't know what was real. I have a developing case of schizophrenia. I'm on medication and I'm doing my best. Most days I manage fine, but I do have episodes. And that night, after the adrenaline started fading, my brain started doing that cruel thing where it offers 2 explanations and neither one feels safe. Either someone was out there, or my mind created something that felt completely real. And I'm telling you, that uncertainty is its own kind of fear, because it means I can't neatly file it away as just a creepy night. It sits in this space where I keep asking myself, was I in danger? Or was my brain lying to me? All I know is, I'll never forget those eyes. Hey, so I'm gonna try to explain this without sounding like I'm completely losing it. But honestly, I don't really have a neat explanation. I'm 17 and I live in North Jersey. Not a house, an apartment complex. The kind where most of the neighbors are older and it's usually pretty quiet. especially in the early morning. I've always been a morning person, like annoyingly consistent. On school days, I'm up at 5 a.m. on the dot because I like having time to get ready slowly. Wash up, do my hair, throw on some makeup, eat something. Just start the day without rushing. And at that hour, it's always silent. Like the kind of silent where every tiny sound feels louder than it should. So this started back when I was a sophomore, around the middle of the year. I remember because my routine was the same every day, and what I heard always happened at the same point in it. At 5:20 a.m., I started hearing what sounded like a woman screaming. At first, I did what anyone would do. I tried to explain it away. Maybe someone was watching something too loud. Maybe it was kids messing around. Maybe it was the building itself, old pipes, weird echoes, the way sounds travel through these walls. But then it kept happening. Every morning, same time. And the longer it went on, the harder it was to pretend it was nothing, because it didn't sound like someone yelling out of annoyance. It sounded like pain, like panic, like a person begging the world to stop. The worst part is, it wasn't just one scream. It was repetitive, over and over, and it kept getting louder, like whatever it was getting closer, or getting angrier, or getting more desperate. Now, I'll be honest with you. I've always believed in paranormal stuff. My family's the kind that has stories they swear are real, not campfire stories, stories told quietly, like you're not supposed to say them too loud. So when this started happening, part of me went straight to that place in my head, like, oh no, this is one of those things. But then summer came, and it stopped. And I convinced myself I imagined the whole thing, or at least exaggerated it, because during summer break, I was never awake at that time. I wasn't up at 5. I wasn't there at 5:20 to hear anything. So it faded. I forgot. Life moved on. Fast forward to now, I'm halfway through junior year, and about 2 weeks ago, it started again. And this time, it's worse. By then, the apartment above ours wasn't just some upstairs unit anymore. My grandmother was living there. So when I first heard it again, I tried to be logical and tell myself it was just my grandma waking up early, maybe dragging something, maybe the TV. But then I really listened. It wasn't my grandma. It was that same female scream, only now it sounded louder, sharper, more brutal. Like the kind of scream that makes your stomach drop before your brain even catches up. And then there were other sounds with it. Heavy footsteps, like someone pacing fast or stomping. And sometimes, this part makes my skin crawl even saying it, this dragging noise, like something dense being pulled across the floor. I started thinking things I didn't want to think, like, what if it's not paranormal at all? What if someone is actually being hurt somewhere in this building? What if I'm hearing something real and awful and just standing there brushing my teeth like an idiot? Today was the day it really got to me. I was in the bathroom, washing my face like normal, half awake, and it started up again. Only it was so loud this time, it felt like it went straight through the walls. Bloody murder screaming, the kind that makes your whole body react. Instant goosebumps, heart pounding, that weird cold rush in your arms. But it didn't stop. It went on and on, like 20, 30 minutes, and it felt so real that I started getting this heavy dread in my chest, like I wasn't just hearing a sound. I was being pulled into it. And when I finally went into the kitchen, my mom was there. Just normal, calm, like nothing was happening. So I finally asked her, for the first time ever. I was like, "Do you hear that? Have you heard it before?" And she just nodded, like it was casual. She said, "Yeah, I've heard it." And I remember just staring at her like, "What do you mean you've heard it?" I asked why she never said anything to me, and she brushed it off. said it was probably just neighbors being loud or kids or people arguing, and that these buildings amplify everything. But my mom is also the kind of person who has seen things that made her choose religion just to feel safe again. She had experiences when she was a teenager, back in her home country. Stuff that scared her so badly she trained herself to explain everything away after that. Like, if she gives it a normal reason, it can't touch her. Then she hit me with something that made me feel sick. She told me my grandma has been hearing it too, ever since she moved in upstairs. So after school, I went up to talk to my grandmother, my abuela, and I tried to sound casual, like, "Hey, have you been hearing anything weird in the mornings?" And she didn't even hesitate. She told me those screams wake her up at 5:20 a.m., almost like an alarm clock, and that it usually stops around 6:10. Hearing her say the exact same time, without me prompting her, made my whole body go cold. Because that's the part that doesn't feel random. That's the part that feels intentional, like something is scheduled. And now I'm stuck, because I've tried to research the building. I've tried to find stories, past incidents, anything. Some old news article, some warning, some explanation. But there's nothing. It's just an old complex with quiet hallways and people who keep to themselves. But the sound is too consistent, too long, too emotional, too human. And I keep thinking about the way it makes me feel when it starts, like the air shifts, like the walls are thinner, like something is closer than it should be. So yeah, I don't know what to believe. I don't know if it's the building playing tricks with sound, or someone actually being hurt, or something else. Something that's been here longer than we have. All I know is, every morning when I see the clock creeping toward 5:20, I feel my stomach tighten like my body already knows what's coming. And the worst part is that I can't tell if it's trying to get my attention, or if I'm just the one finally listening. So, I don't talk about this a lot, because it's one of those things that sounds ridiculous out loud, even though I know what I saw. The first time it happened, I was about 6. I was sitting on the carpet with my tablet, just reading. Nothing creepy, no scary videos, none of that. I remember the screen freezing, like it hit this loading page. And that's when I noticed the reflection. Right there in the black glass, behind me, was this face. Except it didn't feel like a real face, more like a mask shaped like one. Bright white, super plain, no real features to grab onto. The weird part is how narrow it was, like someone took one of those blank craft masks you can buy in a pack online and squeezed it thinner. I honestly didn't even feel fear at first. It was more like my body reacted before my brain did. I shut the tablet off instantly, stood up so fast my legs wobbled, and I tossed it behind me like I expected it to smack into something. When I turned around, nothing. Empty room, quiet house. Just me, standing there with my heart starting to catch up to what happened. The second time I saw it clearly was years later, around 16, when my best friend Jay was sleeping over. It was late, like the kind of dark where the house feels like it's holding its breath. My door was cracked open, and we were sitting on the floor playing games with the sound low. And then, at the exact same moment, we both paused. No words. No, "Did you hear that?" Nothing like that. We just stopped playing and slowly looked toward the hallway like something was standing there. And it was. The same narrow white mask. Exactly the same. This time, I think I saw more of it, like a thin, shadowy body attached to it, darker than the hallway itself. But it moved fast, kind of gliding, like walking but not quite. It crossed the hall and slipped past the doorway, like it had somewhere to be, like we weren't even the point. Jay saw it too. I know he did, because we looked at each other right after, and his face said everything mine was trying not to. And here's what's so hard to explain. Neither of us felt threatened. No dread, no run, no panic. Just this heavy awareness, like something was there, and it wanted us to notice that it was there. Those are the only 2 times I've seen it head-on like that. But in between, I've caught it in the corner of my eye, just a sliver of white where it shouldn't be, gone the second I turn. And other stuff has happened too. Little things at first, then bigger. The one that sticks with me the most is this. We had a piece of fine china sitting on top of the fridge. No pets, no one near it, nothing shaking, no explanation. And it just slid. Like it got shoved with force. It launched off the fridge, skated across the kitchen, and into the living room. And it didn't break. That part messed with me almost more than if it had shattered, because it felt deliberate, like it wanted to show strength, but not destruction. But the reason I'm talking about it now is because something happened recently that crossed a line it's never crossed before. I've been with my girlfriend, Liana, for about 5 years. We're both 18 now. She's way more into spirituality than I am. Like, she'll talk about energy and signs and all that, and I'm usually the one trying to find the practical explanation. She comes over all the time, and she's never had anything happen to her in my house. Not once. Until this. She asks if I can scratch it for her, and I'm like, yeah, of course. So she turns around, and my stomach just drops. Her lower back, the top of her butt, the sides, it was covered in scratches. Fresh ones, red, wet, some of them actually dripping like they'd just happened. And they weren't random. They were in these paired lines, clustered in sets of 3, like something dragged down, lifted, then did it again. My first thought was, maybe she did it in her sleep. But she bites her nails to nothing, like they don't even reach past her fingertips. There's no way she could have done that to herself, especially not that many, especially not that deep. And the blood, it dried freakishly fast, like the scratches were made right before we woke up, or right after. I just stood there staring, trying to force logic into it, and all I could think was, this thing has never gotten close. It's never touched me. It's never tried to scare me. But it touched her. And I can't shake the feeling that whatever's been lingering at the edges of my house for years, whatever's been wearing that narrow white mask, finally decided it didn't just want to be seen anymore. So, for context, I'm 19. I live right near the India-Nepal border, and I'm in Nepal most days. I dropped out for a bit to focus on entrance exams, but if I'm being honest, that turned into me just being home all the time. My sleep schedule is wrecked. I'm up late, scrolling, watching random videos, telling myself I'll fix it tomorrow. Last night, well, technically this morning, around 1:20 a.m., I was bored out of my mind, so I texted my boys, Aftab and Mohi. They're both 20, and they were awake too, obviously, because none of us sleep like normal people anymore. Aftab replies with this idea like it's nothing. Let's go check out that abandoned Catholic boarding school, St. Catherine's Academy. I'd heard little rumors before, you know? People talking about it being haunted, weird stuff at night, all that. It apparently shut down a few years back, around 2018 or 2019, after running forever, like since the mid-1900s. Enrollment dropped, it closed, and it's been sitting there empty since. None of us are big ghost believers. We're more like bored believers. The kind of people who do dumb things at 2 a.m. because our brains are fried. So we check maps. Turns out it's like 25 minutes away from where we were. And around 2 a.m., we're in Mohi's car, driving out there with that weird, this is either going to be funny or a mistake energy. When we get close, the place is huge. Like, not just one building. There's the main academic block, old dorm buildings, and this chapel tucked in, all connected by these covered walkways. There's fencing around it, but of course there's a gap near the back where people have obviously slipped in before. We park off a quiet side road and walk up using only our phone flashlights. And I swear to you, right away it felt wrong. Not boo-scary wrong. More like the air itself was heavy. It was way too quiet. No dogs, no insects, no wind. Just that kind of silence that makes your ears feel full. Mohi tries joking like, "Bro, if a nun runs at me, I'm leaving you both." But I could hear it in his voice. He was forcing it a little. The main doors were chained up, but there was a ground floor window smashed in, so we climb through. We land in what looks like an old classroom. Desks stacked in the corner, a faded crucifix still on the wall, and the chalkboard. It still had writing on it, barely visible, like someone left mid-lesson and never came back. We start exploring the hallways, peeling paint, water stains, broken ceiling tiles, the usual abandoned building vibe. Aftab is recording on his phone like he's making a documentary, and Mohi keeps throwing out one-liners, trying to keep it light. And honestly, after a bit, we started relaxing. Because it just felt empty. Creepy, sure, but empty. We go upstairs. There are offices with papers scattered everywhere, a library with these sad, empty shelves, and a teacher lounge with chairs turned over like someone left in a hurry years ago. Then we find the corridor to the chapel. It's this long walkway, and at the end, the chapel door is slightly open, just enough to notice. That alone felt wrong, because everything else was either locked or broken into. But this was just open like somebody forgot to close it. We step inside, and the chapel is small, maybe 100 seats. The pews are still there. There's an altar at the front, and above it, this life-size crucifix that looks way too intense in flashlight beams. Stained glass on both sides, some cracked, some missing pieces, so you get these weird, jagged shadows on the floor. We walk down the center aisle taking pictures, whispering, laughing a little. And then, halfway down, all three of us stop at the exact same time. Mohi goes really quietly, "Yo, does anyone else feel like we should leave?" And my stomach just dropped, because I felt it too. Aftab did too. It wasn't like, I'm scared. It was like sudden panic. My chest tightened, my throat went dry, and I got this sick certainty that we were not supposed to be standing there. We didn't even argue. We turned around to head out. And that's when we heard it. A child laughing. And listen, this is what freaks me out. It didn't sound like some horror movie demon laugh. It sounded like real giggling, like a little girl playing. Happy. Normal. It came from the front left side near the altar. All three of us froze. Aftab whispered, "What the hell was that?" And nobody moved. Then it stopped immediately, like someone hit a mute button. We stood there for maybe 20 seconds, trying to convince ourselves we imagined it. And then it happened again. But this time, it sounded like it was behind us, closer to the entrance. Mohi goes, "Nope, nope, I'm out." And he starts walking fast. That's when we heard footsteps above us. The chapel has a second-floor balcony, like where a choir would stand, and the footsteps weren't random creaks. They were slow, deliberate, like someone pacing back and forth, taking their time. We could hear the floorboards complain with each step. Nobody said anything. We didn't do the hello thing. We didn't investigate. We just ran. Like fully ran out of the chapel, back through that corridor, hearts hammering, phones shaking in our hands. And then comes the part that really messed us up. As we're rushing through the corridor back toward the main building, Aftab stops dead at this old bulletin board. It's covered in faded notices and pinned papers that look like they've been there forever. Most of it is unreadable, but there's one newspaper clipping that's still clear enough to make out. Aftab snaps a picture, and we're all leaning in close like idiots, breathing hard, trying to read it by flashlight. The headline says something like, "St. Catherine's student dies in tragic accident." The article is from the early 2000s, 2002 or 2003, and it talks about a 9-year-old girl named Arushi who fell from the choir balcony during rehearsal and died. They called it an accident, but there was this line about parents raising concerns before it happened, like something felt unsafe or off even back then. And we just went quiet. Because the footsteps we heard, that was on the exact balcony. The laughing, that sounded like a young kid. And the panic we felt in the middle of the aisle, all three of us at the same time without anyone leading the vibe. We got in the car and drove home without talking. Not even the usual, "Bro, what was that?" stuff. Just silence. Like our brains were trying to find a logical explanation and failing. It's almost 4 a.m. now, and I'm sitting here wide awake, still feeling it in my chest. Aftab and Mohi are typing in the group chat like, "I can't sleep." Same. Bro, I swear I heard it. And I want there to be a rational reason. I really do. Maybe the laugh was an animal. Maybe the footsteps were the building settling. Maybe we just freaked each other out. But the timing, the way it all lined up, and then that article? Yeah, I don't know. All I know is none of us want to go back. Not even to prove anything. Because whatever that was, it felt like we weren't welcome. So, ever since our new neighbors moved into the other half of our duplex, I swear my sleep has been wrecked. You've got this little toddler, maybe 2 or 3, and the kid just goes. Like full speed, back and forth, tiny footsteps pounding through the place like a mini freight train. After a couple nights of lying there wide awake, I started hunting for anything that might help. Earplugs didn't cut it. Headphones were annoying. And eventually, I landed on a white noise machine. Figured it'd be the simplest fix. And it was, at first. But then something happened that I still can't fully shake. One night, I'm lying in bed with the machine on, trying to let my brain finally drift off. And suddenly, through the static, it sounded like a little kid's voice. Like a small child, clear as day, softly saying, "Dad, Dad, Dad," over and over. Not loud, not screaming, just tucked inside the noise. I sat straight up, heart racing, and I went to check the house. Checked on my partner, checked on the kids. Everything was normal, everyone asleep, quiet, no TV, no toys, nothing. So I tell myself I imagined it, that I'm overtired, that it's my brain doing that pattern-finding thing it does. I get back into bed. I roll onto my side, and it's like my ears catch something else, like tuning a radio without meaning to. The white noise sounds normal for a bit, and then this other sound starts to slip in. A steady rhythm, like 2 pieces of wood clicking together. Tap, 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 tap. Almost like someone keeping time. It went on long enough that I stopped breathing for a second, just listening, trying to convince myself it was part of the machine. But it didn't feel like it belonged there. It felt deliberate. Then I roll to my other side, and this time I hear a man's voice, sudden and sharp, like he said a whole word or phrase right into my ear. I couldn't make it out, but it was definitely a voice. And the creepiest part was how it seemed to echo back every few seconds, quieter each time, like a fading repeat. The second I sat up, gone. Just plain static. So I lie back down again, carefully, almost like I'm testing it. And sure enough, as I shift positions, the weirdness comes and goes. Like sitting up resets everything. Like rolling over tunes me into something that isn't supposed to be there. And that's when I remembered. I've had this happen before. Years ago. Different place, different noise machine. Same unsettling feeling of hearing something inside the sound. Like an EVP, but happening live, while I'm fully awake. Now I'm stuck in this awful middle space where half of me is like, this is just your exhausted brain pulling shapes out of static. And the other half of me is like, okay, but why does it change when you move? Why does it sound like voices? Why does it feel like it's trying to land on meaning? And honestly, that's the part that gets under my skin. Not just that I heard it, but the thought that something could be using the noise to get through. Like it's nudging my perception in a way I didn't agree to. So I'm sitting there in the dark thinking, is something trying to communicate with me through this thing? Is that even possible? Or is my brain just doing that creepy audio illusion trick where static becomes words if you listen long enough? Either way, the result is the same. I'm wide awake, unsettled, and staring at the ceiling like I'm the one haunting the room. I think I'm done with the white noise machine. I'm seriously considering going back to headphones even though they're uncomfortable to sleep in. At least headphones feel controlled, like I'm choosing what I'm hearing. If you were me, sleep-deprived, already on edge from the non-stop stomping next door, and then suddenly hearing that in your relaxing noise machine, what would you do? Hey everyone, welcome back to the Paranormal M channel. Thanks so much for always supporting the channel and sticking with us. And a huge thank you to everyone who's been sending in your mysterious experiences. Don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications. Drop a comment and let me know where you're watching from. Lately, I've been counting down to the end of the day so I can sit here and share these mysterious stories from all around the world with you. Alright, let's get started. Hey, so I've only ever had one moment in my life that genuinely made me stop and think, okay, what was that? And honestly, it's probably pretty mild compared to some stories people tell, but it shook me in this quiet, personal way that stuck with me. This was back when I was in high school. I had this corgi named Pippin, and I'm not exaggerating when I say we were attached at the hip. He had this routine where he'd climb onto my bed like it was his bed, curl up close to my legs, and he'd stay there most nights like that was just the natural order of the universe. One night, I'm lying there with him, half asleep but still awake enough to be doing that mindless, affectionate petting you do when you love something and don't even have to think about it. I'm scratching behind his ears, and I'm talking to him in that embarrassing baby voice people swear they don't use until they absolutely do. I keep going. You're such a good boy. You're a good boy. Yes, you are. Probably 3 times in a row, maybe 4. And then, clear as day, right next to me, I hear a man's voice calmly respond, "Appreciate it, pal." Just like that. No distortion, no mumbling, not a TV in the other room, not someone down the hall. It sounded close, like it came from the space right above the blankets. And I froze, like fully locked up. I stared at Pippin. He was just lying there, relaxed, looking sleepy. I didn't see his mouth move. Nothing about him changed at all. But I heard it. I heard it the way you hear a person reply when you speak to them. And after that, there was absolutely no chance I was falling asleep anytime soon. I remember lying in the dark, eyes wide, trying to talk myself into literally any explanation. Maybe I imagined it. Maybe I was drifting off. Maybe my brain stitched something together. But the problem was, it didn't feel like imagination. It felt like someone was in the room with me and answered. Here's the thing, too. I never had anything else happen in that house. Not once. No weird noises, no creepy feelings, no haunted house vibe. Nothing before, nothing after. That moment was like a single drop of ink in an otherwise normal life. Now, my mom, she's had her own weird little moment, and it happened years later. By then, she'd moved into a different place, and she had the dog and my younger sibling living with her. I was away at college, living in a dorm. Pippin was old at that point. Sweet, slower, the kind of old where they seem softer around the edges. And then, one day, he passed away from age. Peacefully. The night after he died, my mom couldn't sleep. She's always been like that. The kind of person who can fall asleep but wakes up an hour later and just lies there, stuck in her thoughts. She told me she was awake in bed, staring at the ceiling, when she suddenly heard it. Little paws pattering across the floor. Quick, familiar footsteps, followed by a collar tag doing that tiny metallic jingle. And she said it wasn't subtle. It sounded like a dog trotting through the hallway like it belonged there. So she jumps up, heart pounding, and checks the house. Walks from room to room, turns on lights, looks around, almost expecting to see him standing there, tail wagging like nothing happened. But there was nothing. The house was still, quiet, empty. And just like my moment, it happened once and never again. Not like a scary haunting. Not like some lingering presence trying to get attention. More like a brief little echo. A final pass through familiar rooms. Like they're checking the places they loved one more time, just to say, yeah, this was home. And that's it. That's my one unexplainable story. The only thing that's ever happened to me that I still can't neatly tuck away into logic. And even now, thinking about it, it doesn't feel terrifying so much as oddly tender. But I'm not gonna lie, when I heard that voice that night, I did not sleep for a while. So, like the title says, I just moved into this house and a few weird things have been happening. Nothing full-on horror movie, but enough to make me pause and go, wait, what? I'll start with the smallest thing that somehow felt huge. I have this big, chunky pillow I keep at the foot of my bed during the day, mostly for my two little dogs, because they like to climb up and loaf on it like it's their personal throne. One evening, I went downstairs to let them out after dinner. I was the only one in my room before that. No one else had been upstairs. No roommates living here full-time yet. Nothing. I'm gone for, what, a couple minutes? Long enough to open the back door, stand there half asleep in my slippers, and wait for them to do their business. Then I come back upstairs, walk into my room, and I'm about to sit down. And I notice the pillow is on my little folding lap desk, the one I use for journaling in bed. And not like nudged or half fallen, fully placed, centered, like someone set it there on purpose. I just stood there staring at it, trying to talk myself into a normal explanation, but there wasn't one. I didn't touch it. The dogs weren't even upstairs, and even if they were, they couldn't have moved that thing and perched it neatly on the desk. It's bulky, awkward. It doesn't accidentally end up there. That was the first moment I felt that low, crawling unease. Not fear, just confusion with a little edge to it. Then there's the sounds. The other night, I woke up suddenly because I could have sworn I heard one of my dogs crying outside my bedroom door. And I mean crying, loud, desperate. That heartbreaking sound that makes you sit up before you're even fully awake. I popped straight up in bed, already guilty, already thinking, oh my God, I shut her out. I swung my legs over the side, reached toward the door, and then I turned my head and saw her. Right there, curled up on her little bed in the corner, eyes open, staring at the door like she heard it too. My stomach did this weird drop, because it wasn't a faint sound or something I imagined in that half-dream state. It was clear. It sounded exactly like her. But she was right there, quiet as anything. I remember whispering her name. Maisie? Like she might answer me. She didn't. She just kept watching the door. And I laid back down, but I didn't sleep right after that. I kept replaying it, thinking, what was that? What did I hear? And then, the thing with my bigger dog. His name is Hank. Sweet, gentle, honestly kind of a goofball. He's not the guard dog type. He's usually the type to trot upstairs the second I call him, tail wagging, like he's just happy to be included. But the last few nights, he's been doing this thing where he stands at the top of the stairs and stares into the laundry room. The laundry room is right off the stair landing, and at night it's completely black. No windows, no light, just this dark rectangle of a doorway. He just stands there, perfectly still, and then he starts growling. Low at first, then barking, sharp, angry barks, like something is there and he's warning it. I'll call him. Hank, come on, buddy. Nothing. He won't move. He won't even look at me. It's like he's locked in. And he's never done this before. Not once. Not in any other place we've lived. Not in hotels, not at friends' houses, nowhere. The only way I can break it is by going downstairs, putting my arms around him, and carrying him up to my room like he's a toddler who refuses bedtime, like he's guarding the line between upstairs and whatever's down there. But the most upsetting thing, the thing that's making me question myself, is something that sounds stupid when I say it out loud. Groceries. I had groceries delivered a few days ago, and while I was putting them away, I remember very clearly getting annoyed because I thought I'd accidentally ordered 2 of the same coffee creamer. I even remember the exact feeling, that little flash of irritation, like, great, now I'm going to have extra clutter in the fridge because I can't click the right thing. I remember holding both new creamers side by side and sliding them onto the shelf next to the nearly empty one I was already using. That memory feels solid, like a snapshot. But this morning, when I opened the fridge to make coffee, there were only 2 creamers total, the almost empty one and 1 unopened new one. Not 3, not 2 new ones, just 1. So I started checking everything. I moved stuff around, checked every shelf, looked behind containers, even checked the paper grocery bags like somehow it rolled back into them. Nothing. Then I pulled up the receipt, and it said I only ordered 1. And I just stood there, staring at my phone, because now I'm not just creeped out, I'm unsettled in a different way. Because what do you do with a memory you're sure happened when the proof says it didn't? I've been trying to stay practical about all of this. I checked the obvious stuff. I've got brand new carbon monoxide detectors around the house, and they're working. I'm not living with roommates yet. Technically, there are other people on the lease, but they're not fully moved in, and I'm the only one here day to day. So it's not like someone's messing with me. And that's why it feels so isolating. It's not one big terrifying thing. It's a bunch of small, wrong things. A pillow that ends up somewhere it shouldn't. A sound that shouldn't exist. A dog acting like there's something in the dark. A memory that feels real, but doesn't match reality. I don't even know what I'm asking for. Maybe I just want someone to tell me I'm not losing it. Or that there's some explanation I haven't considered yet. Because right now, I'm in this weird place where I don't feel unsafe, but I don't feel fully settled either. And I really, really want to feel at home here. Okay, so I'm 32, and this is just part of my life, honestly. I've always had these odd little premonitions, these flashes of knowing, and moments where I swear I can feel energies the way other people feel temperature. It's not something I've trained or explored the way I probably should have. It's more like it finds me when it feels like it. So a couple nights ago, I went to bed feeling unusually overheated, like sticky summer air hot. And I did something I basically never do. I slept with only a thin sheet. That might sound normal to most people, but for me, it's not. Ever since I was a kid, I've slept with a heavy blanket pulled up around my neck and shoulders. I know that sounds dramatic, but it's like my body refuses to relax unless I'm protected there. I've always felt like it connects to some old fear buried deep, like my throat has always felt vulnerable. I don't know how else to explain it. And that night, I also ended up on my back, which is another thing I almost never do. That's where it starts. I fell asleep and I'm dreaming, but the dream felt more like I'd stepped into someplace real. I'm in this small downstairs apartment, kind of cramped, dim lighting, the air feels stale. And there's someone with me, a friend. His name in the dream was Eli, and he felt familiar in that dream logic way where you just trust them. We realize the place above us, this house or unit, has a door that isn't locked. Like the whole building is just open. And the moment we notice it, dread rolls in. Not panic exactly, more like the sudden certainty that something bad can get in, and it's already on its way. There's this gap in my memory, like my mind skips a frame. And the next thing I remember, Eli and I are hiding in a closet. And here's the part that makes my stomach drop even now. The closet looked exactly like my closet in real life. Same shape, same hanging bar, same awkward corner where stuff always piles up. Then everything goes completely black. Not dark like nighttime dark, not shadowy, just gone. Like my eyes are open but there's nothing to see. And that freaked me out on a deeper level because I have vision issues. My left eye has never been great. So the idea of complete blackness hits a nerve that's hard to describe. And then, I'm on my back. I don't even know if I'm still dreaming at that point or halfway awake. It felt like both at once, like I was caught between worlds. But I could feel something coming at me, fast. I couldn't see it, but I felt it the way you feel a storm roll in before the first drop hits. The air got thick, heavy, hostile. Like the room was suddenly crowded with something that hated me. And my first reaction, because I'm stubborn and I do not fold easily, was to talk trash. I actually said, out loud, "Oh, come on then." Not in a brave movie hero way, more like pure instinct. Like, if you're coming, then come. The second I said it, it hit me. A weight, solid, crushing weight, slammed down onto my body. I felt it press into my legs first, like someone dropping their full body weight onto my shins. Then it slid up, stomach, chest, until it pinned my neck and throat like it was trying to erase me. It felt like, I don't know, like the weight of a full-grown person. Heavy enough that my body registered it as real. And then I heard it. It lasted only seconds, but it branded itself into my memory. Even now, if I sit in a quiet room too long, I can almost hear it again. And I lost it. I screamed, "Get off me!" And immediately, my eyes snapped open and I was fully awake in my bedroom. Real life, real ceiling, real air. I didn't move for a long time. I just lay there frozen, staring, trying to figure out if I was still in danger. I kept replaying that growl in my head like my brain was stuck on it. I eventually shook my partner awake. His name is Marcus. And I was like, please, just hold me. I needed another human body in the room, something grounded. And our cat Miso hopped up too and curled right in, like she knew. Between Marcus's arms and Miso purring against my ribs, I finally felt my nervous system unclench. Now here's the thing. I've never had sleep paralysis. Never. People talk about it, and I always wondered if I somehow avoided it because I don't sleep on my back. So the next day, I went down a full rabbit hole. Hypnagogic hallucinations, hypnopompic hallucinations, all the clinical terms, all the explanations. And none of them felt like they fit neatly. Not the way I needed them to. Also, this is relevant, I promise. I have this obsessive counting thing. Not the typical cleaning and checking kind of OCD, but counting in my head constantly. Steps, turns, bites, items. Sometimes it's like my brain is trying to control chaos by measuring it. And I have this intense aversion to repeating things in threes. It's tied to trauma for me. Like my mind thinks if I hit certain numbers, something bad follows. It's exhausting, but it's also how I've coped. So I'm already a person whose nervous system runs hot. I already pick up on patterns. I already feel things most people dismiss. Fast forward to the next night. Nothing weird has happened all day. I'm tired, but awake. Marcus steps out of the bedroom to go shower. I roll onto my side in bed and start scrolling on my phone, just trying to decompress. And the exact moment he disappears into the hallway, like the second he's out of sight, I hear it. Right behind me, maybe 5 to 10 feet away, clear as day. Psst. Like someone trying to get my attention. I froze. My whole spine went cold. Then I shot upright and said, firmly, out loud, "You're not welcome here. Leave me alone." And as soon as I said it, something clicked in my head. A few days earlier, we'd gone to this little pop-up vintage tent sale, one of those places with tables of old stuff and boxes you have to dig through. Marcus, our kid, and I all picked out a few random things. A cracked leather camera case, a couple old toys, 2 antique glass bottles, some little knickknacks. Just fun, harmless family treasure hunting. Except, the timing lined up perfectly. Everything that started happening started after those items came into the house. So I didn't debate it. I didn't overthink it. I gathered every single thing we bought that day, put it all in a box, and took it straight outside to the curb. Then I found an old bundle of sage I'd had tucked away for ages. I walked through the house and smudged every corner. Closets, doorways, hallway, bedroom, everywhere. And I spoke the words like I meant them. Only peace lives here. Anything heavy, anything cruel, anything that doesn't belong, leave now. And since then, nothing. No growls, no whispers, no heaviness, no weird dread creeping in at the edges. The house feels like it did before, warm, normal, ours. So do I know for sure it was the secondhand stuff? I can't prove it. I can't hand you a scientific chart and say, here's the data. But in my bones, the way my body reacts when something is wrong, I truly believe it was connected. Like something hitched a ride. Like we brought home more than antiques. And honestly, it's a bummer because we love antiquing. It's kind of our thing. But if the price of a cute vintage find is that kind of darkness in my bedroom, yeah, no thanks. So, growing up, my family moved around a lot. It was just kind of our normal. Boxes half unpacked, new streets, new neighbors, the whole thing. But there was one place we lived that felt different. in a way I still don't know how to properly explain. The house was bigger than any place we'd had before, and it backed right up to the yard of a small church. Like, you could practically step out the back door and be on church property. The neighborhood itself was rough. There were always people wandering through, lots of addiction, lots of folks sleeping wherever they could. Even in the daytime, the town had this heavy, dim feeling to it, like the air was tired. And while we lived there, I started having the same nightmare over and over. It always started the same way. I'm in our family room with my parents and my little brother. Everyone's gathered like it's a normal evening. And my best friend at the time, his name was Jonah, was there too. Jonah and I would be sitting close to the TV, locked into some video game like it was the most important thing on earth. Here's the weird part. It was always the same part of the game. Same hallway, same eerie music, same slow build toward this one door. Every time we got close to that door, my parents' whole vibe would change, like they'd suddenly remember something terrible. My mom would sit up straight, and my dad would look toward the front door, and they'd both tell us, fast, urgent, "Turn it off, now, shut it off." So Jonah and I would scramble and turn the game off, and then everything would go quiet. Then my dad would start switching off the lights, not just the TV, like the lamps too, one by one, until the room was almost completely dark. And then my family would whisper for us to hide, like this was something we'd rehearsed. Everyone would pick a hiding spot, but I always went to the same one, behind this big green armchair we had. It was kind of ugly, honestly, this deep olive color with worn fabric, but in the dream it felt like the only place I could go. I'd crouch behind it, holding my breath so hard my chest would ache. And then, the front door would open, slowly, like whoever was coming in wasn't in a hurry at all. And in would walk this creature. It was large, bigger than a person, but not in a giant cartoon way. More like wrong. Too much mass, like it was swollen. Its skin, or whatever it was, looked shiny and wet, and it was this deep, glistening blue. Not a pretty blue, more like the kind of blue you see on certain insects when light hits them at the right angle. I never really saw its face clearly, but I knew it had one. I just couldn't make myself look long enough. The thing that stuck with me most was the shine, like it reflected the darkness. And it would walk into the house as if it belonged there. No rushing, no searching wildly, just steady steps straight into the room, straight toward that armchair, straight toward me. Every single time, the dream ended the same way. The creature getting right up to the chair, close enough that I could almost feel the cold of it, and then, right before it leaned down to find me, I'd wake up. I'd wake up sweating, heart hammering, sometimes with that awful feeling that the dream didn't fully stay in the dream. And then, we moved out of that house, and it stopped. Like someone flipped a switch, no fading away, no occasional repeat, just gone. The dream vanished with the place. Years passed, a lot of years. I didn't even think about it much anymore. Just one of those childhood things you file away under weird and try not to poke at. Eventually, my mom got quiet, like she was deciding whether she wanted to say what was on her mind. And then she looked right at me and said, really calmly, "I remember when we lived in that house behind the church, and I used to have these visions of something watching you." I swear, it felt like my stomach dropped through the floor. Because I had never told her. Not once. I'd never told anyone about that nightmare. It felt too bizarre, too specific, and honestly, I didn't want to give it any more attention than it already had. But she kept going. She said there was one night when she'd gotten up to shower late, everyone else asleep, the house quiet. She was rinsing her hair, and when she closed her eyes and tipped her head under the water, she suddenly saw something, like an image that wasn't imagination, not a daydream. "A big blue thing," she said. standing over you, right next to your bed. She told me she jerked back so hard she nearly slipped. She shut the water off, grabbed a towel, and ran down the hall to my room, drenched and panicked, only to find me sleeping peacefully. Nothing there, just darkness and a kid in bed. I remember just staring at her, feeling cold all over. Because how do you explain that? How do you explain that the thing she saw was the same thing I'd been dreaming about, in the same house, during the same stretch of time? When she finished, I told her. I finally told her about the nightmare. The game, the door, the hiding, the green chair, the blue shine moving closer and closer. And my mom's face went kind of tight, like she was trying not to show how much that bothered her. We talked about it for a while, quietly, seriously. Not in a dramatic way, just two people comparing notes on something neither of us wanted to be true. And we ended up with the same uneasy conclusion. Whatever that was, it felt tied to that house. Like something lingered there, or clung to that place, or maybe latched onto the feeling inside it. But it didn't come with me when we left, at least not that I've ever noticed. I'll be honest, after that conversation, I was nervous. I had this fear that talking about it would invite it back, like remembering it too clearly would reopen some door that had finally closed. But it's been years since we talked about it, and the nightmare still hasn't returned. And I'm not going to lie. Every time I think about it, there's a part of me that quietly hopes it never does. Hey, so I want to tell you something that's stuck with me for basically my whole life. And just so you know up front, I'm not some paranormal expert or anything. I'm just telling you what I remember, the way it sits in my head. When I was little, like little, probably around preschool age, my family lived in this old farmhouse out in the countryside. My grandparents lived right next door on the same property, so the whole place felt like one big shared patch of land. The house was ancient, built way back in the 1800s, so by the time I was growing up there, everything had that older than you can explain feeling. Weathered wood, creaky doors, barns that always looked a little tired, even when nothing was wrong. Anyway, it was one winter evening, cold enough that the air hurt when you breathed it in. I'm pretty sure it was late November or early December. The sun was completely down and out there. Once it's dark, it's dark. No streetlights, no nearby neighbors. Just silence and shadow and that big open space that feels twice as huge at night. My mom asked me to walk over to my grandparents' place to return a couple of VHS tapes I'd borrowed. It wasn't far, just a short walk. But I had to cross the farm driveway to get there. And I remember being a kid, walking alone, and trying to act brave while my stomach was doing flips. Later, I learned my mom and my grandma were watching from their windows the whole time, just making sure I got there safely. But at that age, I didn't feel watched over. I felt alone. When I reached the driveway, something shifted in me. Not like a jump scare kind of fear, more like that heavy, instinctive feeling that something is off. My anxiety shot up for no clear reason. I remember pausing and turning my head toward the barns, and I could see my dad in the workshop area, moving around like he was fixing something. Just seeing him made me feel a tiny bit grounded, like, okay, real life, normal stuff. So I turned back to keep walking, and that's when I saw them. A boy and a horse. They were standing near the edge of the driveway, right where I had to pass, and I can still picture them like a photograph that never fades. They weren't glowing like a flashlight or anything, but they had this pale, off-white sheen to them, like they didn't belong to the same darkness as everything else. The weirdest part was that the light didn't spill onto the ground or the nearby fence or anything. It was just them, like they were lit separately from the world. The boy was dressed in a way I didn't recognize as a kid, but now I'd call it old-fashioned. He had dark, knee-length trousers, suspenders, and a white, long-sleeved shirt. And he wore this wide-brimmed hat that made his face look even more still, like it was framed. He was holding the reins of the horse, and the horse was fully saddled, like it was ready to go somewhere. I don't remember the horse as clearly as I remember the boy, but I remember it looked healthy and calm. I can't say for sure what color it was. Maybe light brown, maybe white, maybe a mix. I just know it definitely wasn't black. And here's the thing that still makes my skin prickle. They didn't move. Not even a little. The horse didn't shift its weight. The boy didn't blink. He just stared straight at me, completely emotionless, like he was waiting for me to do something first. And I remember standing there, frozen in the cold, too scared to scream, like my body had forgotten how. It couldn't have been long, maybe only a few seconds. But you know how time stretches when you're terrified. It felt huge. I bolted. I ran back home so fast I nearly crashed through the door. I remember practically throwing myself inside and yanking it shut behind me, like that would somehow seal the whole night out. And when I looked back, nothing. Gone. Just empty driveway and darkness. I told my parents right away, of course, but you know how that goes. They didn't believe me. Or maybe they didn't want to. They brushed it off like it was my imagination, or a kid's brain turning shadows into stories. Years passed. About a decade or so later, we were still tied to the same property. By then, my mom was even running a daycare out of the house. And the boy and his horse had basically become this spooky little story I'd tell friends when they came over for the first time. Half joking, half not, because even though I could laugh about it, I never forgot how real it felt. Then one morning, broad daylight, one of the daycare kids was getting dropped off. The parent was walking them in, and out of nowhere, the kid pointed toward that exact spot by the driveway and said something like, "Look, Mommy, horsey." And I remember my blood just draining. Because that kid had no idea. Nobody had told them anything. They just pointed like it was the most natural thing in the world. I didn't see anything when I looked. Nothing at all. But my mom said I went white as a sheet, and I know I was shaken. And weirdly, kind of thrilled too. Because it wasn't just me anymore. It meant, at least in some small way, that I hadn't invented that night out of thin air. I'm glad it seemed less scary for the kid, though. They weren't frozen like I was. They weren't terrified. They just noticed something. After that, I had a few other strange moments in that old house. But honestly, most of them I can explain away as sleep paralysis, because I've had that, and it can mess with your senses in a way that feels completely real. The only one that still nags at me is this one time I lay in bed and watched the carpet in my childhood room dent like footsteps were moving across it, like someone walking, slow and steady. But even then, I was in bed, half asleep, and I didn't move or call out. So who knows? My brain could have been playing tricks. I've been back to the property since then. My grandma still lives next door, and everything is calmer now, I guess. I haven't seen the boy and the horse again, and I haven't heard anyone mention it since that daycare moment. But I swear to you, if I close my eyes, I can still see that winter night like it's right in front of me. The driveway, the dark, the way the air felt, and that boy standing perfectly still, holding the reins, looking straight through me like he'd been there long before I ever was. Hey, so I've been going back and forth on whether to tell this story out loud, because every time I replay it, I get that same tight feeling in my chest. But I'm going to try, because maybe saying it plainly makes it feel less stuck to me. So I live with my mom, Mary Ann, and until recently my grandpa, Gordon, lived with us too. Our place is in rural Saskatchewan, and it's one of those late 80s houses that always has a little creak in it, especially when the temperature drops. Nothing fancy, just a normal, lived-in home. My mom bought it about 12 years ago, and as far as she knew, there was no weird history, no tragedies, no big stories tied to the land, nothing that would make you raise an eyebrow. And honestly, I used to be the type to roll my eyes at haunted house stuff. But the timeline matters. Back in January 2024, my grandpa took a bad fall on the stairs. He ended up in the hospital, and that's when things started feeling off. Like the house had been holding its breath while he was there, and then, suddenly it didn't know what to do with itself. At first, it was sounds. My mom and I would be upstairs at night and hear slow, deliberate footsteps in the basement, right where Grandpa's room was. Not the usual house-settling pops. Not the, maybe the furnace kicked on noise. Actual movement. We'd pause and look at each other like, did you hear that? And then we'd do the whole rational thing. Old house, pipes, wood, wind, whatever. But then it stopped being just noises. Little things started happening that were hard to explain away without feeling like you were lying to yourself. The downstairs bathroom sink would be running when neither of us had been near it. The laundry room door would be open after we both remembered shutting it. Cupboards not fully closed. Lights doing that flicker, then just turning off, like someone flipped the switch while you were still standing there. And once, this one still bugs me. The old stereo down there turned on for maybe 3 seconds. Not quietly. Not like it came on and faded in. It blasted a radio station so loud it sounded like someone was messing with us. And then it cut off, right as I walked past the doorway. It's the kind of thing that sounds small when you list it out. But when it's your house, your normal, everyday space, and it keeps happening, you start moving differently. You start listening harder. You start avoiding certain rooms. What scared my mom more, though, wasn't even the house. It was the hospital. There were 2 moments with Grandpa that the family still talks about in that careful, quiet tone. Like if you say it too boldly, it invites something in. The first time, my mom and my aunt, Janelle, were sitting with him after dinner. Grandpa leaned toward my mom like he had a secret, and he whispered, "Who's that over there? Is that a nurse?" And he pointed to the corner of the room. My mom turned, expecting maybe a staff member had come in without her noticing. But the corner was empty. Just the same hospital chair, the same beige wall. Nothing. The nurses had already warned us he wasn't totally himself after the fall, so they tried to shrug it off as confusion. Hallucinations, medication, stress. But the second moment, my aunt still can't talk about it without tearing up. She was alone with him late at night. She said he was drifting, half asleep, when he suddenly jolted upright, eyes wide, face tight with fear, and he told her, very quietly, "There's something behind you." She said she froze, because the way he said it didn't sound confused. It sounded certain. She stood up fast and spun around. Nothing. Just the dim room. No one there. And my aunt swears. She felt a touch on her shoulder. Not a pat, not a brush, a deliberate pressure. And right after that, like a breath against the back of her neck, she bolted up, grabbed her coat, and called my mom, shaking so hard she could barely get the words out. My mom told her to go home, to leave right then. And after that, nothing else happened in the hospital. For a while, things at the house calmed down too. Not completely, but less. Like whatever it was had gotten bored. Then Grandpa passed a few weeks ago. And since then, the basement has felt active again. Not in a dramatic movie way, more like a persistent feeling that something is restless. We'd hear odd knocks, a faint shuffle, the occasional light flipping when you know you didn't touch it. But tonight is what finally snapped something in me. It was around 10 p.m. My mom walked into my room in this totally casual way and asked, "Do you want ice cream?" I said yes, obviously, and I started to head toward the front door to put my shoes on. She laughed and told me I didn't have to come if I didn't feel like it, so I decided to stay home. Before she left, she told me, "Lock up behind me, okay?" And I said I would. She walked out. I heard the front door close. I went to the bathroom for a minute, and when I came back out, I locked the door like she asked. I remember doing it clearly because I had that brief, stupid thought of, wow, I'm being very responsible right now. The screen door wasn't locked, but it was definitely latched, like it always is. Then I went back to my room, put my headphones on, and got back into a game. I even had my floor fan going, so there was noise on top of noise. Maybe 10 minutes later, 10, 15 at most, I heard my mom's voice, loud and clear, calling my name from the front entry like she'd just come back in. Not muffled, not distant, not maybe I imagined it. It cut through my headphones and the fan like she was standing in the hallway. She called my name and said something like, "Come grab it." Ice cream. So I jumped up, annoyed at myself for not hearing her come in. I called back, "Sorry, I didn't hear you get home," and I hurried to the door. And when I turned the corner, the front door was slightly open. Not wide open, but cracked, like someone had just come through it. And the screen door was wide open, and the porch was empty. No mom, no car pulling in, no headlights, no footsteps, nothing. Just cold air and that open doorway. I swear my whole body went hot all at once, like my brain couldn't decide whether to panic or deny reality. I stepped forward, looked out into the night, and the street was dead quiet. No engine, no gravel crunch, nothing. I shut the door so hard my hands stung. I locked it, then checked it, then locked it again even though it was already locked, and I backed away from it like it might swing open on its own. I sat in my room with the lights on until my mom finally came home for real, holding a bag with ice cream like everything in the world was normal. I told her what happened, and she went pale in that way people do when they're trying not to scare you while they're also scared themselves. We searched the whole house together, because the only explanation that felt even slightly grounded was that someone had gotten in. But nothing was missing. Nothing was disturbed, other than that door. And here's the part that makes it even creepier. We have 2 dogs. They bark at delivery drivers, squirrels, their own reflections, everything. But during most of these weird moments, they stay quiet, like they don't want to acknowledge it. So, that's where I'm at. I don't have some big dramatic ending. I don't know what it was. I don't know how my front door ended up open. I don't know how I heard my mom's voice in the house when she wasn't even home. All I know is that it sounded like her. It used the exact reason she'd have to call me, and it lured me right to the front door. We're moving soon, and I'm clinging to that like a lifeline. Because if this is tied to the house, or to whatever shifted after Grandpa got sick, I just want it left behind. I want a new place to feel quiet again. And I want my mom's voice to only ever belong to my mom. So, I've worked in care for a long time now. Let's call it 25 years and change. And I can tell you, I've seen some things that still make my stomach flip if I think about them too hard. There was one place I worked at for about a decade, and that building had history. Everyone knew it. It sat on land that used to be an old hospital, and even outside, you could still see parts of the original brick boundary wall running along the edge like a reminder that the past never really moved on. People would talk about little things at first. Staff walking the corridors and swearing they'd seen someone step into a room. Then when they checked, nobody was there. That sort of thing. Quick glimpses. movement at the edge of your vision, enough to make you pause, but not enough to prove anything. Then they started refurbishing. New floors, new paint, changing the dining room layout. And honestly, renovations always seem to stir things up, like you're waking a house from a long sleep. I remember walking through the dining area one day when it was half torn up, half reassembled, and I saw this man, clear as anything, standing near the doorway. He was in a green military uniform with one of those peaked caps, and there was a bright band around it. He looked straight at me, raised his hand in a proper salute, and said, plain as day, "They gave me my foot back." And then he was just gone. Now, I should probably tell you something about me. I'm a practicing pagan witch, and I've always been sensitive. Call it psychic, call it mediumship, call it whatever you like. I used to be part of a small paranormal group years ago, back before ghost shows made everything feel like entertainment. We'd do quiet little checks after hours sometimes, usually with maintenance on their rounds. Because if you're going to investigate a big old building, you want someone with keys. One of the maintenance guys, a proper history nerd and a total skeptic, let's call him Graham, loved trying to catch me out. He'd dig into old records and old maps and then ask what I picked up, like it was a game. So I told Graham what I'd seen in the dining area, and he went a bit still, because, without me knowing, he'd already been looking into the site's past. Turns out during the Second World War, that hospital had been used in a specific way. Across the road there'd once been a rail spur, and it ran toward another hospital nearby, one that's still operating today. The story went that one place handled the general wounded, and the older hospital on our land had been used more for officers or special cases. And that line, "They gave me my foot back." Graham said it made him think of soldiers coming back from injuries, prosthetics, surgeries, all that. That wasn't the only time either. Another day, I was in the kitchen and I saw a woman shuffle past the doorway, holding her arms tight against herself like she was protecting her chest. She looked exactly like one of the residents, so I went straight out, heart thumping, ready to guide her back. But when I checked, she was safe on the unit, sitting exactly where she'd been all along. Later, someone told me there'd been a cook years before I started. Lovely woman, apparently, who had a twisted hand, and she'd walked with her arms held close like that. She'd also looked eerily similar to the resident I'd mistaken her for. That cook had passed away before I ever joined. But my oddness helped sometimes too. There was a laundry worker, let's call him Dean, who lost the keys to the laundry and was panicking, because in a place like that, keys are everything. We sat down and drew a rough sketch of everywhere he'd been. Then I took off my necklace and used it like a pendulum. I told him, "Look under the sink, not in the cupboard, underneath, tucked back." He did, and there they were, just sitting there like they'd been placed carefully. And then there are the messages. I don't know how else to describe it. Sometimes I just get a word in my head, over and over, like someone tapping the same note on a piano. One morning, a kitchen worker was serving breakfast, and I kept hearing the word, plums. Not once, not twice, constantly. So finally I said, "This is going to sound ridiculous, but every time you walk past me, I'm hearing plums, and it's driving me mad. Did something happen at home? Something spill? Something smash?" Her face drained of color. She told me that the night before, her husband had been told not to eat something because of medication. He'd ignored it, tried to sneak it out of the fridge, and a jar had smashed all over the floor. Not plums exactly in her case, but close enough in the way the message came through. Someone making sure he didn't take what he shouldn't. I told her, "Well, it sounds like someone's looking out for him, even if they're doing it in a very dramatic way." And pregnancy. Oh, pregnancy is another one. I don't go around announcing it like some party trick, but sometimes I just know. I've told women they're pregnant when they swear they're not. Then they come in the next day wide-eyed with a positive test. I even told one colleague she was having a girl, and that the baby would arrive on October 31st. She laughed at me like I'd lost my mind. Her daughter was born on Halloween. But not everything felt friendly. There was one corridor in that old place that turned my blood cold every time I went down it. You know how some spaces feel heavy, like the air is thicker? It wasn't just sadness, it was anger, sharp and old. 2 rooms in particular felt wrong. In that corridor, I used to hear a woman's voice in my head, like she was speaking through clenched teeth. He knew it would finish me. Other staff, people who didn't believe in any of this, kept describing the same thing. A woman in a white nightdress, long dark blonde hair, standing where she shouldn't be. Always in that stretch of hall. And then there was one incident that genuinely scared me. I got pulled onto a unit I didn't usually work on. There was a man in a wheelchair there, new face, and the moment I felt his energy, my skin crawled. It wasn't just unpleasant, it felt sticky, like tar, dark, wrong. This wasn't only an elderly care home, you see. Some residents had mental health conditions too, people who were hard to place elsewhere, so you learned to stay grounded, professional, calm. I did what I'd come to do, then turned to leave. And I saw the man in the wheelchair staring upward at something no one else in the room seemed aware of. Beside him stood what I can only describe as a tall figure, easily 2 meters, wrapped in what looked like a black robe, like the fabric ate the light around it. I froze, completely, like my body had forgotten how to move. And then it turned its head toward me, just enough to let me know. It knew I could see it. And then it vanished, instantly, like a candle snuffed out, she told me. And I heard myself say, before I could stop it, "He won't be here next week." He passed away a few days later. Not long after that, there was a resident, gentle woman, who asked me to wash her hair because her husband was coming to visit. I offered, and she looked at me with that calm, steady gaze some people get near the end and said, "I won't be here tomorrow." Then she added softly, "You know what I mean." I did know. I washed her hair anyway, carefully, like it mattered, because it did. When I finished, she held my hand and thanked me, and said she was going through, and didn't need to say the rest. I told her, "If you can, let me know you're all right." She nodded, smiled. 2 days later, I was back on shift. She had passed away the next day, just like she'd said. And I was in the laundry room with a coworker, sorting sheets, when a box on the top shelf suddenly flew off and smacked into the door hard. Right after it hit, I heard this bright, unmistakable laugh, like someone delighted with themselves. My coworker bolted out screaming. I just stood there and said, quietly, "All right, love. Thank you. I hear you. Take care." Because I knew exactly who it was. I never worked nights at that old place, and honestly, I'm glad. I can't imagine what I might have seen if I had. I worked at other homes after that, little bits here and there, nothing huge. Sometimes I wondered if I'd shut myself down without realizing, like turning the volume down inside my own head. But then I started at the place I'm in now, and I've been here since it was built. It's only around 10 years old, so you wouldn't think it would have that kind of activity. But it does. During training, before we even officially opened, I told the manager, "I keep feeling a little girl, like she's running around laughing, just out of sight." The manager went pale and asked me to come to the lounge. On the coffee table, plain as day, there was a small handprint, like a child had pressed their palm into dust or residue. I hadn't told anyone except her. Since then, residents have mentioned a little girl too, talking to her like she's just another person in the room. I've heard bangs on walls when nobody's near. One time I was in an office opposite the laundry with only one housekeeper in that end of the building. We both heard what sounded like a heavy box slam into a wall. We both ran out at the same time, each thinking something had happened to the other. Nothing. No fallen boxes, no accidents, just a sound, like something wanted to be noticed. And at night, people have seen lights moving past the office window when the building should be dark. These days, I work nights now, and nights are different, quieter, thinner somehow. I've seen people sitting in lounge areas when everyone is tucked in bed. I've seen small orange balls of light hovering at the end of a corridor, like floating embers. I've seen shadow figures on one floor, and on another, I felt something behind me, close enough that my shoulders tense, even when I refuse to turn around. One night, a colleague and I sat down at the desk around 3 a.m. to do paperwork. All residents asleep, everything settled, and we both heard someone say her name, soft, clear, right beside us. Tan. I looked at her and said, "Did you hear that?" She swallowed and said, "Yes," and I was hoping I hadn't. I don't turn the lights off when I'm on shift, especially if I'm alone. I know some people prefer dim and quiet, but I don't, because I don't want to see what the dark makes easier to see. Around Christmas, we had an expected death. I was on another floor when it happened, and the team there were newer, shaken, so I went to sit with them for a moment. We were in a little area near the doors, decorations everywhere, and 2 long banners had been hanging down the sides of the doorway for weeks, completely still the whole time. While we were talking, one banner shifted as if an invisible hand pressed from behind it, halfway down, pushing it outward and dragging it slightly downward. Not a flutter, not a breeze, a deliberate movement. We all looked at each other, and one of us, without even thinking, said, "Hello, love." And it felt like exactly that. A hello, a gentle sign. I'm still here. For now. Another night, someone swore they saw a butter dish slide from the back of a kitchen counter to the front, and the knife resting on it clattered to the floor after it moved, like it had been nudged. And one time, I was walking down the corridor, and I saw a solid figure step toward the lift. Black trousers, smoky blue blouse. I called out, because you do, don't you? You assume it's a coworker. But when I got there, no one was in sight. The lift hadn't been called. Every resident on the floor was asleep. The only other staff member was in a room I'd just left, helping someone. That same figure has been seen more than once, especially near the laundry doors. And on that floor, another coworker and I have both looked through the dining room window late at night and seen what looked like someone standing inside when the room should have been empty. On another floor, I was checking in after hearing one of the seniors say she'd heard something odd. We stood listening, and down the corridor, where there were no female residents awake and no women working in that stretch, we heard a woman laughing. We checked rooms. No TVs, no radios, everyone asleep. We went back to where we started and heard it again. So I walked down that corridor and said out loud, firmly, "That's enough. You need to leave. No more." And the laughter stopped. Completely. Nothing else for the rest of the night. We've even had something show up on the CCTV outside, like a glowing movement across the car park. 2 staff went out, and 2 of us stayed inside directing them by phone, lining them up with where the light was moving. The moment they stepped into the spot, the glow shot away fast and disappeared. And one evening before shift, I was outside chatting with a coworker near the smoking area when we heard tapping on a fence near a locked maintenance storage section. Tap, tap, tap. We ignored it. Then it happened again, and again. So I grabbed my metal bottle, swung open the gate, and stepped inside. Nothing. No animal. No bird. No person. And trust me, if something had run, we would have seen it. What makes all of this stranger is that this building is relatively new. It's not some crumbling Victorian place with creaky floorboards and old portraits. It's modern. But behind it is a country park, and there's a stream that runs past and under the car park. And water. Water has always felt like a doorway. So I'm not surprised we get more than our fair share of happenings. I just wish I could tell you I'm used to it. Because some nights, even now, after all these years, when the corridors go quiet and the building settles into itself, I still catch myself walking a little faster than I need to, just to get to the next lighted space. Hey, so I've been deep in a rabbit hole lately, and it's basically two things that keep circling each other like they're connected: precognitive dreams, and that unsettling idea that sometimes people somehow sense when the end of their life is getting close. Let me start with the dreams, because that's the part that keeps messing with my head the most. I've had this happen a lot, more than I'd expect if it was just coincidence. I'll have a dream, and it's not vague or symbolic or anything. It's specific, like a scene, a place, a conversation. And then days later, sometimes weeks, sometimes months, something happens in real life that lines up so closely it makes my stomach drop. And the weirdest part is, it's not always a place I recognize. Sometimes in the dream, I'm standing somewhere I've never been before. Like the layout is unfamiliar, the lighting is unfamiliar, the whole setting feels brand new. Then later on, I'll end up going somewhere. Maybe a trip, maybe visiting someone, maybe just tagging along on something random. And suddenly, I'm there. And it's not, oh wow, this feels familiar, like déjà vu. It's not that at all. It's more like, no, I've literally seen this already. Like my brain pulls the memory of the dream off a shelf and goes, this is the exact moment. This is it. And that's what makes me wonder, if the mind can do that, if it can somehow pick up pieces of the future, then is it really that impossible that it might pick up something darker too? Like your own death? Because the second thing I've been thinking about is those moments when people seem to shift right before something tragic happens. Like there's this strange change in them that doesn't make sense at the time, but afterward everyone looks back and goes, wait, why did they do that? For example, I remember hearing about a musician, Jace Rylan, who was killed in a sudden robbery situation. A short time before it happened, he posted this emotional video that felt different from his usual vibe. It wasn't like he was predicting it directly, but the way he spoke, like he was saying goodbyes without saying the words, made people revisit it afterward and wonder if he felt something coming. That kind of thing always sticks with me, even if you can't prove what was in his head. But the one that really gets me is closer to home. Someone connected to my family, let's call them Marina, about a week before they died, they did something completely out of character. They spent one whole day calling people, not texting, not casually liking posts, calling. Like they needed to hear voices, like they needed to make sure things were said out loud. And it wasn't just one or two people, it was a list. Family, old friends, people they hadn't spoken to in forever. And every call was basically the same message. I just want you to know I care about you. You matter to me. I'm grateful for you. Stuff like that. Everyone thought it was unusual, but nobody thought, oh no, something's about to happen. You don't think that. You just assume maybe they're feeling emotional. Maybe they had a rough week. Maybe they're reflecting, whatever. And then, about a week later, they drowned. That's the part that makes me feel cold when I think about it. Because it's like, what was that? Was it random? Was it instinct? Was it their subconscious noticing patterns or risks they weren't consciously aware of? Or was it something deeper, like some internal alarm going off that they couldn't fully explain? And that's where these two topics connect for me. If your subconscious can stitch together future moments in dreams, specific ones, detailed ones, then maybe it can also pick up on the trajectory of your own life. Not in a dramatic crystal ball way, more like quiet signals, patterns, probabilities, micro decisions. danger you haven't consciously registered, changes in your body you haven't noticed yet, things that add up. And maybe some people interpret that as a feeling, or they suddenly get this urge to close loops, to make calls, to apologize, to tell people they love them. Like the part of them that doesn't use words is trying to do something important before time runs out. I don't know. I'm not saying I'm convinced. I'm just saying it doesn't feel as impossible as it used to. And honestly, I'm curious. Have you ever had a dream that came true later? Not a coincidence, not a general theme, but a real moment you recognized as soon as it happened? Or have you ever felt that strange, unexplainable heaviness, like something was coming, even though you couldn't point to anything? I've been trying to figure out how precognitive dreaming could even work, or why it happens to some people more than others. And I'd really love to hear what you think, your ideas, your experiences, anything. Because the more I look into it, the more it feels like there's something here, even if we don't have the language for it yet. So here's a little background before I jump in. A few years ago, we moved into this brand new townhouse that had been built on what used to be farmland in upstate New York. It was me, my husband Evan, our two little ones. One was about 6 months old and the other had just turned 2. Plus my 18-year-old daughter Marisol and our enormous, goofy Irish wolfhound puppy named Bram. And I'll just say this up front. I've always been the kind of person who can sense when a place has leftover energy. Like, I don't go looking for anything, but if someone who used to be alive is still sort of around, I usually feel it before anything happens. Marisol's the same way. But when we moved in, nothing. It felt clean and empty, totally normal. Until one night. Our baby was sleeping in a crib right next to my side of the bed, so close I could reach over and put my hand on him without even getting up. I remember waking up because he started fussing for a feeding. I was half asleep, that mom autopilot feeling, and I started to sit up. And then I heard a man's voice, very calm, very close, say, "He's okay. I've got him." Not loudly, not scary, just matter of fact, like someone reassuring you the way a partner would. And this is the part that makes me laugh now, I just mumbled, "Okay," and laid right back down. Like my brain accepted it for a second without question. I even put my hand on the side of the crib, still sleepy, and started drifting off again. Then I hear footsteps, and Evan comes into the room holding a bottle, looking at me like, "Why are you still lying there?" He'd apparently woken up first, gone downstairs, and was making the bottle the whole time. So now I'm sitting up, blinking, trying to sort out why I thought someone else had it handled. Because Evan hadn't been in the room, and there were no other adult men in the house. That was the first time my stomach did that little drop. About a month later, it happened again, only this time I was wide awake. It was just me and the kids at home, and I was making dinner. Bram was still young, still in that stage where he was technically a puppy, but already the size of a small horse. And if you turned your back for 2 seconds, he'd absolutely help himself to anything on the counter. So I'd started putting him in his kennel in the garage while I cooked. The garage door was right off the kitchen, super close, but it was shut, the light was on, everything normal. He hated being kenneled and would whine this long, dramatic, miserable song the whole time. I'm chopping vegetables, checking on the toddlers, hearing this big dog complaining behind the door. And then the whining stops. Just instantly. And I hear a man's voice, gentle and steady, say, "It's all right, buddy. It's all right." Twice, maybe 3 times. I actually froze with my hands still on the counter because my mind was doing the math really fast, like, nope, not possible. Nobody's here. I yanked open the garage door so fast I almost slammed it into the wall. And there was nobody. No movement, no footsteps, nothing. But Bram was shoved as far back into the corner of his kennel as he could get, wide-eyed, trembling, and he had peed on himself, like he'd been scared out of his mind. That part got to me, because it wasn't just me hearing something anymore. The dog reacted like someone was there. Not long after that, Marisol came to me one evening and said, really casually, "Okay, has anything weird been happening here?" And I looked at her and I was like, "Why?" And she'd just say hi back. I asked her, "Does it sound angry? Like bad?" And she shook her head. "No, it sounds friendly, like someone being polite." That's when I realized this wasn't one-off weirdness. Whatever it was consistent. After that, it became almost routine. We lived there another year, and the voice would pop up now and then. Not constantly, just enough that you'd forget about it for a while, and then it would happen again and you'd get that chill like, oh right, you. Sometimes it would be simple things, like when we walked in with groceries and we'd hear, "Hey there," like we'd just come home to a roommate. Sometimes it would comment on little everyday stuff. "Smells good," if I was cooking, or "It's coming down out there," when it was raining. Once I couldn't find my keys and I was doing that frustrated mom search, checking the counter, the diaper bag, the couch cushions, and I heard, plain as day, "By the back door." And they were. My husband didn't love any of it. Evan is a sweet guy, but he's also very much a reality has rules person, and this did not fit neatly into his world. At first, he wanted to pretend it wasn't happening, but eventually, you can only ignore something for so long when it keeps saying hello. He got used to it in the way you get used to a weird house noise. You don't like it, but you stop panicking. Bram, too, changed over time. In the beginning, he was wary, always stiffening, staring into corners, acting unsure. But later, I'd see him wag his tail and stare at empty space like someone was talking to him. And every once in a while, we'd hear something soft like, "Good boy," or "Hey, buddy," and Bram would calm right down. And the strangest part is, it never felt threatening. No slamming doors, no shadows, no footsteps running down the hall. Nothing physical, nothing aggressive, just this presence that seemed content to be noticed. Eventually, that's what it felt like to me. Someone who wanted acknowledgement, maybe even someone lonely. The energy in the house, when he was around, felt warm, almost like a familiar neighbor who talks a little too much but means well. When we moved, he didn't come with us. The new place was quiet, and it stayed that way. And honestly, I hope whoever moved in after us was the kind of person who would answer back. Just a simple, "Hi." Hey, so I've been sitting with something I saw a little under 2 weeks ago, and I can't shake it. I keep replaying it in my head, trying to make it make sense, and it just doesn't. For some context, my boyfriend Evan and I took a trip through Yellowstone. We rented this small camper van and spent about a week moving between different campgrounds, just trying to see as much of the park as we could. The van was one of those custom builds, 2 seats up front, and the whole back was basically a bed. The ceiling back there was low enough that you could feel it if you sat up too fast. We had privacy figured out pretty well, too. There was a curtain we could pull behind the front seats so you couldn't see into the back from the windshield, and we stuck those sunshade blockers on the windows. And one detail that matters a lot. One of the sliding doors on the side didn't have a window at all. Just solid metal. No glass. Nothing. Anyway, this happened early on our fourth morning. I don't know the exact time, but it had to be somewhere between 4 and 5 a.m. It was still fully dark, that heavy pre-sunrise darkness where the world feels extra quiet. Evan was asleep beside me, and I was half awake, just listening to the little nighttime sounds outside. Wind, maybe some distant rustling, that kind of thing. And then, suddenly, this light appeared. It was a round, soft orange glow, about the size of a softball, and it came up on the window closest to me. Not bright like a flashlight, not sharp or harsh, more like that warm, sunset lamp color people use in bedrooms, with a slightly darker center, almost like it had depth to it. My first thought was immediate. Someone is outside the van, like a creep with a flashlight trying to look in. But the way it moved didn't match that. It drifted, slow and smooth, like it was gliding. And what messed with my head was the sound, or the lack of it. We were in a campground, not a paved parking lot. If someone was walking around the van, I should have heard something. Gravel shifting, twigs snapping, footsteps, a jacket brushing the side of the van. Anything. But there was nothing. Just silence. I was so scared I couldn't even move. You know that feeling where your whole body goes stiff? Like your brain is yelling at you to do something but nothing responds? That was me. I didn't even breathe right. I just pressed myself closer to Evan, like if I held on to him hard enough it would make me safer. And this orange light kept moving. It traveled along the windows, around the van, like it was making a full loop. It circled us back there in the bed area. Steady height, steady speed, no wobbling, no darting. Almost like it was calmly inspecting the space. And it didn't flicker. It didn't brighten or dim. It just stayed the same soft, warm orange the entire time. Then it disappeared. No fade out, no walking away, just gone. After a while, once I could finally make my body cooperate again, I woke Evan up, completely convinced we'd had some kind of peeping Tom situation. I told him, someone walked around the van with a light. He tried to be reassuring, like, maybe it was another camper's flashlight, or maybe a car passed, just trying to give it a reasonable explanation. But I couldn't let it go, because something felt off. So I had him sit in the back while I recorded video and walked around the van with my flashlight to recreate what I'd seen. And right away I realized two things. First, my flashlight was the wrong kind of light. Too white, too sharp. Nothing like that warm orange glow. And second, this is the part that made my stomach drop. My flashlight couldn't do what that light did, but the orange light I saw that morning didn't change when it passed that door. It didn't weaken. It didn't disappear for that section. It stayed consistent the whole time, like it didn't care whether there was glass there or not. That's when the thought hit me, very quietly and very clearly. Whatever it was, it wasn't outside. It had to be inside with me. And I know how that sounds. Trust me, I know. The thing is, I'm not new to weird experiences. I've had a handful of things happen over my life that I've never been able to explain away. Not dozens, not like a constant thing. Maybe 7 real encounters total. But enough that I don't automatically dismiss everything as nothing. Usually, though, when something spiritual happens to me, it feels recognizable. Like I can tell what I'm dealing with. This was different. I've heard people talk about orbs forever, and I always assumed it was mostly camera stuff. Dust, bugs, lens flare, people wanting to believe. But I wasn't taking a picture. I wasn't looking at a screen. I watched it with my own eyes as it moved around the van. And I did some digging after the trip, trying to find anything that looked similar, and the closest thing I found was a doorbell cam video someone posted online where an orb-looking thing floats through the frame. People were saying it was probably a bug near the lens, but when I saw it, I swear my whole body reacted because the movement was so similar. That same smooth, level glide. What I saw stayed at one height, moved like it had intention, almost like it was slowly circling the bed area where we were lying. And the fear I felt was so immediate and physical, like my body knew something my brain didn't understand yet. In the moment, I truly thought it was a person outside, being creepy. But I know I didn't hear footsteps, and I know how loud a campground floor is at night. Gravel and sticks don't let you sneak around like that. Plus, we had everything covered, curtains pulled shut, window shades up. It wasn't sunrise yet either. I could tell because none of the edges of the windows were starting to brighten. And even if somehow some strange outside light source did exist, it still doesn't explain the solid door with no window. So I'm left with this: a warm orange orb of light moving calmly around the inside of our van, steady and silent, like it belonged there. And I don't know what it means. I just know what I saw, and I know how it made me feel. Hey, so I've got to tell you about this trip I took with my old man. I still think about it way more than I want to, and every time I do, I get that little chill right at the base of my neck. So, my dad, Ray, calls me up a few days before the weekend. Says, my partner backed out, drew a tag in another unit. And the way he said it, I could tell he didn't love the idea of going alone. Now, my dad's been hunting since before I was even a thought. I'm talking decades. Bow hunts, rifle hunts, scouting trips, you name it. He's the kind of guy who's calm in places most people would panic. So I'm like, yeah, of course I'm coming. No question. We loaded up and headed out toward the Toyabe Range, out near Kingston, Nevada, way out there. This time we aimed for the Arc Dome area, but not the usual spots. Dad wanted to check a canyon north of Kingston, Weeks Canyon. And if you've never been out there, picture this: rugged high desert with that high Sierra feel, dry air, rock, scrub, and those stubborn little junipers that look like they've been fighting the wind their whole lives. But the thing that sold us on this canyon was water. There was a creek running down from higher up, and we figured, if deer are anywhere, they're going to drift toward water. Everything does. We set up camp right near the mouth of the canyon. At first it felt normal, honestly, kind of beautiful. Bugs buzzing, little birds hopping around, the usual noise. There was thick green brush in patches, and the air smelled like dust and plant sap, like it always does out there. We camoed up and started hiking into the canyon to scout. Not a fast walk, more like that careful pace where you're reading the ground and the brush as you go. Maybe a mile or so in, could have been a bit more. Dad just stops. Not like a casual stop, like someone hit pause on him. He goes dead still, then leans his head slightly, like he's trying to catch something on the wind. He whispers, "You hear that?" So I freeze, hold my breath, and listen. Really listen. You know how your ears start straining so hard you can almost hear your own heartbeat? And there's nothing. No rustle. No wing flutter, no little skittering in the brush, no insects, not even that faint background hum you don't notice until it's gone. I whisper back, "No, I don't hear anything." Dad nods like he expected it and goes, real quiet, "Exactly. There should be something. No birds, no squirrels, no chipmunks, not even bugs." And that's when it hits me. How wrong it felt. Because the place looked alive. There were bushes heavy with wild berries, and a lot of them were so ripe they'd dropped and turned mushy, like they'd been sitting there untouched. Trails that should have had prints, hoof marks, little paws, something, were clean. like no one used them, like nothing went in there, except us. Just our boot prints, leading deeper into this gorgeous green little ribbon of water through the desert, and everything around it acting like the canyon didn't exist. We kept going a bit farther, another half-mile or so, still hoping we'd find some sign that made it make sense. But the deeper we got, the quieter it felt, like the silence had weight. Eventually, Dad turned around without saying much, and I didn't argue. We hiked back out with that weird feeling sitting between us, like a third person. Later that evening, we're back at camp, eating. Nothing fancy, just the kind of dinner that tastes amazing when you've been outside all day. And then it happens. Out of nowhere, this wave of birds, like easily 100, maybe more, comes up from the valley below. It's loud for a second, wings and calls and movement, and then they settle into the brush near camp like they own the place. They landed around us, in the flats, near the dusty open ground, anywhere but that creek, any direction but Weeks Canyon. Dad and I just kind of sat there, looking at each other over our food, and neither of us wanted to be the first to say it out loud. That's not normal. We talked a little, tried to rationalize it. Wind patterns, pressure from other hunters, predators up the canyon, anything. But the uneasiness didn't leave. It just waited. That night I slept, but not right. I had those heavy, strange dreams you can't remember, only the feeling of them, like your brain's trying to warn you without using words. I woke up way before sunrise, 4-ish, maybe a little after. The sky was that deep pre-dawn color where everything feels unreal. Dad was already up. We were going to do a quick morning scout somewhere else. He steps out of the tent to pee, comes back in. Then I go. And listen, this is the part I have trouble explaining without sounding dramatic. But I swear to you, the second my boots hit the cold ground outside the tent, my whole body flipped into survival mode. It felt like eyes were on me. Not little eyes. Not the, oh, there might be a rabbit nearby kind of feeling. Big. Focused. Like something was watching from one single place, and it was locked in on me. I kept whipping my head around, scanning the dark, trying to find a shape, a movement, anything. And I realized my hands were shaking because my brain was screaming, "Get back inside." I don't even remember finishing. I just hustled back into the tent like a kid, zipped it behind me, and sat down hard without saying a word. Dad didn't even ask what was wrong. He just says quietly, "You feel it too, huh?" And I look at him, and my voice comes out smaller than I wanted. "Yeah, something's out there." He cuts me off, really sharp for him, and says, "It's not normal." And man, hearing that come from my dad rattled me more than the feeling itself. Because he's not easily spooked. He spent years in remote Nevada, hunting, exploring, working old sites, places where you learn to stay calm or you don't last. If he says something isn't normal, you listen. So we stayed in the tent until the sky started to lighten, until it felt safer just because we could see. Then we packed fast, got in the truck, and went scouting somewhere else. We didn't even argue about it. It was just decided. I've tried to explain it away ever since. Mountain lion, maybe. That's the obvious answer. They'll stalk, they'll watch, they're quiet. But I've been in tense situations before. I used to work a rough job in corrections for a while, and later I spent time overseas where you learn what real fear feels like. And this was different. This wasn't, "I'm in danger" fear. This was the kind of fear that goes straight through you, like your instincts recognize something your brain couldn't name. And it wasn't just the feeling. It was the whole puzzle. Water but no wildlife. Berries rotting untouched. Trails clean. Birds choosing the open flats instead of the creek. Like everything with a heartbeat had silently agreed, "Don't go in there." I don't know what it was. Maybe it really was just me overreacting, because I'm not exactly some wilderness legend. I'm more of a town kid than my dad ever was. But I'll tell you this, If you'd been there and you'd heard that silence, and then watched those birds refuse to cross that invisible line, I don't think you'd laugh it off either.